across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm your host, Kevin O'Sullivan, and I'll be with you all the way to 10 o'clock. Stand by for 3 thrilling hours of breaking news, views, debate, fury and fun. Get stuck in, get it off your chest and get on the phone. And call me on 0344 499 1000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number, and I promise to play your message out. It is Tuesday, January the 6th. Here's what's coming up. Hundreds of rapists, paedophiles and sex offenders are getting off scot-free thanks to an extraordinary scheme that allows them to avoid punishment merely by saying sorry to their victims. The community resolution system was meant for only minor crimes, but the police and the Crown Prosecution Service are offering sweet deals to more and more serious sex offenders. Rape a kid, say sorry, and you're off the hook. Is that justice? 0344 499 1000. In other news, the long-suffering residents of Crowborough have voted to install thousands of pounds worth of CCTV cameras throughout the pretty East Sussex town ahead of the arrival of 540 migrants to be billeted at the local army training camp. They say they're going to send the bill to the Home Office as they continue to stage huge protests every weekend against an asylum seeker invasion they were never consulted on. This is a story of our times, folks, as this gormless government spectacularly fails to solve the escalating migrant crisis. Simply impose thousands of undocumented foreigners on unsuspecting communities and expect them to put up with it. Why should British citizens have to live like this? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, a question. What exactly is the point of London's shiny new Palestinian embassy opened yesterday? This is a consulate without a country. How has this helped the UK? Hasn't Starmer's anti-Israel virtue signalling merely presented police here with a major security risk and brought fear to the local residents? What is this all about? 0344 499 1000. Plus, ISIS bride Shamima Begum could be on her way back to Britain courtesy of, you guessed it, the European Court of Human Rights, which has haughtily asked the Home Office if it broke human rights and child trafficking laws by refusing to repatriate a terrorist who in 2015 ran away as a 15-year-old to join the mad Islamic death cult. Miss Begum was stripped of her British citizenship in 2015 and has ever since languished in a Syrian desert refugee camp. Shouldn't she just stay there? And shouldn't we just tell the ECHR to do one? 0344 499 1000. She's not our citizen. She's not our responsibility. Tell me what you think. 0344 499 1000. Also, on tonight's busy agenda, the latest chapter in that best-selling book, Donald Trump Takes Over the World. Is the president set to use Britain as a launchpad for an audacious North Atlantic raid on a Venezuelan oil tanker racing to Russia? And what, if anything, will our timid little leader Keir Starmer do about it? 0344 499 1000. Plus, the disturbing tendency of people losing their jobs because of their political opinions. A Salvation Army hostel worker sacked after 20 years for expressing his view that migrants should be sent back to France on small boats. An award-winning nurse struck off after 40 years for posting on Facebook her fears over a Muslim takeover. This isn't about what these people think or say. You may or may not agree with them. That isn't the point. This is about us turning into a country in which citizens are being deprived of their livelihoods because of their unfashionable worldviews. Is that what you want? 03444991000. It's got, this nurse, it's got her opinions about Muslims, her fears for a Muslim takeover. What has that got to do with her ability to be a nurse? She's a damn fine nurse. She's an award-winning nurse. No longer, struck off now, no longer allowed to pursue her profession because of her views on what she sees as a threat of a Muslim takeover of this country. It's not about whether or not you agree with that. It's about her right to have that opinion and about whether or not that opinion has got anything to do with her ability to do her job as a nurse. She was fired for what she thinks. Nothing to do with nursing. Do you like that? 03444991000. Plus, the other Victorian serial killer they never caught. While Jack the Ripper was garnering all the headlines, another fiend was also bringing terror to London. Like the Ripper's awful crimes, the so-called Thames Torso murders were not solved. But now, more than 125 years later, historians say that they know who done it. We'll tell you who that is later on. And finally, after Starmer once again trotted out that much-loved lefty cliche about diversity being Britain's strength, I'll ask, is it? Two political heavyweights go head-to-head in a powerhouse debate. That's later in the show. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Tuesday night together. And fresh from his troubles on British Rail, or whatever you call it these days, let's talk for the first hour to lawyer and barrister Stephen Barrett. Happy New Year to you, Stephen. I saw what happened to you. What's the latest? Well, tell us briefly what happened to you and what the latest situation is.
So, Chiltern Railways don't own Marylebone Station. Marylebone Station is still public land, but they are uniquely licensed to sort of manage it.
Right.
And they decided that this Sunday evening, on which I'd just appeared on a rival television news channel.
How dare you?
How dare I? But about half an hour after I appeared on that, they had set out ridiculous crowd control measures for about 20 of us and a crying baby. And I may have...
To normally get on a train. Right?
Yeah, just before you even got to the normal barriers, which, would have functioned fine. So the whole thing was ridiculous. Had pumped up security guards that we'll come back to those. And I sent some tweets criticising this, specifically criticising the management, because you don't blame, ordinary people. It's not their fault. They didn't do it. It's the idiots in management who chose to do it. I mean, I'm always polite to ordinary people because they don't make these stupid decisions. In fact, ordinary people have got more common sense usually. But anyway, so specifically criticising management, my last tweet was they only police the well-behaved or the decent or something along those lines, the law-abiding.
Decent law-abiding citizens, yeah. I
came to regret that. Up came one of these security guards, and he sort of glowered at me, and I just waved my hand, and by the way, I'm carrying a Waitrose shopping bag and my coat and my phone, and I just went, this is ridiculous. And then he said something in corporate speak, trying to justify them, and I just went, well, this is clown. You're a clown. And at this, I was told, you're not travelling today. And he glowered at me and said, God. I can do that. Which is always a very dangerous sort of phrase when people say that, Kev. Yeah. It sort of means that they've got a bit drunk on power, if you ask me. So I wandered off to try and find somebody more senior. And this chap followed me, and then he said, you've got to leave the station. And then the other chap said, you've got to leave the station. And I'm just like, this is absurd. Yeah, and I'm talking like this, Kev. Yeah. This is the level. Because I still didn't really believe that they were going to do anything to me. I mean, I had a valid ticket. I didn't really believe anybody would stop me travelling, let alone what happened next, which is then they started to physically drag me out the station.
Oh, my God.
Well, if you know anything, Kev, if you're in that situation, you don't try and fight back. You don't shout and scream because they'll just say you did all sorts of things. So all I did was just go limp, and then they dragged me out of the station. So they're dragging an overweight middle-aged man out of the station. I'm just sort of completely bewildered about the entire thing. It's utterly surreal. And then they dragged me sadly over rough concrete. So I end up with a bit of a torn up, let's call it euphemistically, lower back. And then they dumped me on the street outside. So they took me from public property.
Sorry.
And I only just worked this out.
Shouldn't be laughing. I mean, it's,
well, you can if you want to. But I mean, it was just utterly surreal. So
it's
I made
quite funny, but it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And they took me from public property with no authority to do so. They assaulted my person, and then they dumped me on public property.
And are you pursuing them? I hope you are.
Yes, and I have to work out the way to do it best, because they
You
say...
should know. You're a lawyer.
Well, exactly. I think I have worked it out, so don't worry. But there's no way I'm submitting to them having them mark their own homework. I mean, there's just absolutely no way at all. I don't think there's any need to involve the police because, frankly, I suspect we're going to discuss light sentencing. Okay. But the two men who did it, I strongly hope they sincerely regret what they've done. And they were young men, so why blight their lives with a criminal record?
Well, I could say, Stephen, that they kind of picked on the wrong guy. But
well, ultimately, I want management to understand what they've done. But they are now 9 days in, and they still haven't bothered to apologise.
Well,
not a word of apology.
Well, don't let them off the hook, because that's outrageous.
I'm not going.
It's outrageous.
But it is outrageous because it could be anyone. It could be any of your listeners and viewers. And frankly, we just live in a really nasty place. We should live in a nice... I mean, I remember when the country was nice. You know, I remember when, if I'd said that to a security guard back in the day, security guard would have gone something like, I know, but, you know, it's hostile.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. You're right. Well,
and we would have laughed together. That would have been normal.
That's terrible. Well, listen, keep us posted with developments on that. Classic bit of Jobsworthery, I would suggest. Now, listen, let's talk about the community resolution system. I read this story with an increasing sense of shock. My jaw dropping, as I've written here. Rape a kid, say sorry, get off scot-free. That's basically how this system goes. A record number of sex offenders, including rapists and paedophiles, avoided punishment last year under this extraordinary scheme called community resolution. The police and the Crown Prosecution Service are allowing more and more sex criminals who admit their offences to get away with simply apologising to their victims. In some cases, the settlement can involve also a compensation payment, but the cops only say that these out-of-court deals for sex offences normally require the agreement of the victims. So does that mean, well, that does implicitly mean that some victims don't get a say in this. They get this imposed on them, which isn't justice, if you ask me. Over the past year, Stephen, the sex crimes dealt with by community resolutions included 4 child rapes. Oh, he's sorry about raping that child. Oh, well, that's fair enough then, as long as you apologise. 4 child rapes, 20 grooming offences, 400 sexual assaults, and 166 cases of sexual activity with children. In other words, 166 paedophile offences. These are not alleged. These are all admitted. And they are dealt with by a system which allows them to get off scot-free merely by saying sorry to their victims. This is just weird, isn't it?
It's moral degeneracy, but Kev, I'm afraid in the socialist society, they lock up political prisoners and they let the criminals go free because the criminals terrorise the rest of us into a vague sense of compliance. I mean, this is just evil. There's no other way to articulate that. I'd love to see a fellow barrister defend any of this. I really would listen intently, because I just don't see how you formulate an argument to justify this at all. And, you know, that's actually an admission of failure, because it used to be my job to defend things, and I would not know how to start with this. It was absolutely outrageous when we started letting people go over paedophilic images. But to have actually touched a child, you know, I think most of us want life for quite a lot of these things. I mean, the rapes, at least, that's definitely, I can have life for that, can't I? I mean, okay, fine. I'm inclined towards very, very, very severe punishments. But maybe I go too far. But I can at least get life for the rapes, surely. And sexual activity with a child, well, that seems 20 years starting point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You just don't do this. We cannot be a healthy society where this is permitted.
Exactly. Think about these numbers. Go back to the numbers. Over the past year, the perpetrators of these crimes were allowed to walk scot-free by saying sorry to their victims. These crimes, let's say it again. 4 child rapes, 20 grooming offences, 400 sexual assaults and 166 paedophile sex offences against children. Now that works out at way over 500. So we're talking about 10, 11, 12 cases a week of paedophilia, of rape, of child sex abuse, grooming offences, where the cops and the CPS allow the perpetrators of these heinous crimes, these sex offences, to go to their victims and say, sorry about that, I'm sorry I raped you, you're a little kid and I shouldn't have done that. And the cops go, well, just let that be a lesson to you. This has got to stop. This is wrong.
This has absolutely got to stop, and I don't understand how a child can even consent to that sort of disposal. You know, in theory, the victim has to give their consent. Isn't that what they said? Well, how on earth can a child give their consent?
Yeah, but the key word in what the cops say about this is that these out-of-court deals normally, I'm using their word, normally require the consent, the agreement of the victims. So that's, I suppose, all right, but normally means that sometimes they don't get a say in whether or not the person who raped them gets convicted. They're just told you've got to accept this apology and let them walk free. This is a ridiculous system, and you know what it's about? It's about convenience, isn't it? So they can write off, oh, this crime has been settled, we've dealt with this. It's about, the solving statistics and all that. Well, I say that this has to stop. It plays into, in my mind, Stephen, what we learned when Hugh Edwards walked out of court free for his paedophile offences. We learnt then that it's actually pretty much standard procedure, except in very rare circumstances, for all paedophiles on their first offence when they go into court not to be imprisoned. So we have here a very curious national leniency towards heinous sex offences, and I think we need to do something about it.
Yeah, these are the most horrendous offences. Most of us, without any common sense, would consider this to be the most. I don't understand really what the criminal justice system is for, if it's not to punish paedophilia, rape, and murder. Those are the things it should be busying its time with, not mums who tweet. This is really pathetic. We are going to look back upon this stage of our civilization with absolute horror and disgust. There's no other way around it. This is disgusting.
Well, OK, everybody, let me know what you think about this. It's called the Community Resolution Scheme, and this is a scheme by which people who rape children are allowed to get off by saying sorry to their victims. Not only children, just rapists, paedophiles, child sex abusers, grooming gang offenders are allowed to walk free by saying sorry. The cops say, you say sorry, do you agree to that? Oh, that's good, off you go. Isn't that wrong? Don't we need to stop the Community Resolution Scheme? I suppose it's okay with minor crimes, which is what it was designed for, but they've let it segue into very serious crimes, including an extraordinary number of sex offences. More than 10 every week last year ended up with the perpetrator, the sex offenders, being allowed to walk away free just by saying sorry. That is ridiculous, as Stephen said. That is a sign of a degenerate society that has lost track of its moral backbone. Don't you think? We've got to end this. 0344 499 1000. Next up, we're going to get philosophical. We're going to talk about the increasing tendency of people to lose their jobs for their political opinions that have nothing to do with their jobs, but they are sacked because their worldview is not fashionable. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Is this just the beginning of something from Donald Trump, or do you think this is a one-off?
Well, and I think that's the other big concern, Jeremy. I mean, are we going to see Donald Trump using the U.S. military to march through the Western Hemisphere? God forbid I say it, the way Adolf Hitler marched through Europe. Or are we looking at a situation too where this is really more, in my mind, I can't help but wonder if this isn't a test to see if the U.S. military will follow any orders he gives.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with a barrister and political commentator Stephen Barrett. Stephen, this is one for you. Got lots of stories for you tonight, actually. I picked them especially for you, but this one is interesting. A Salvation Army worker, I'm not sure if he was a member of the Salvation Army, called Charles Markey, worked for 20 years at a Dundee hostel run by the Sally Army. He made a joke because they changed the migrant housing policies in Scotland. Scotland takes an inordinate amount of our illegal cross-channel migrants. They changed the policies, and apparently his hostel was inundated, and he was irritated by this. And he said to his colleagues, apparently in a sort of light-hearted way, these refugees should be sent back on an effing boat. In other words, the same way as they came. When a colleague challenged him, asking him if his comment included a Syrian migrant that was currently staying at that Dundee hostel, Markey replied, yes, the lot of them. He said that this was at a tribunal. He said that this was his personal opinion, and he thought that the remarks were light-hearted. And he didn't see what it had to do with his job. Now, the judge rejected Mackey's defence and declared that he had shown complete insensitivity towards those migrants, asylum seekers in the hostel, and that he should have been duty-bound to help, and that, as such, the Salvation Army were right to sack him, that they lawfully... they were within the law to get rid of him. Now, this follows the case, I think it was last week, even more striking case of the 40-year veteran nurse, Roberta Batchelor, in Birmingham, who was sacked, struck off, banned from being a nurse, a job that she'd done with distinction for 4 decades. She was an award-winning nurse. She won a Pride of Birmingham Nursing Award, Pride of Nursing Award in 2015. She was struck off for posting on Facebook her alleged racially motivated reservations about Muslim migrants. She fears that there is a Muslim takeover of this country going on, and she posted some pretty sort of hardline posts on Facebook about her views, cartoons of Arabs running around with knives and things like that. Not a great, not something that I would necessarily approve of or that we would rush to condone. My point is about both these people. Here's a guy who works in this hostel who said something that someone didn't like very much. And again, I don't think it's a very nice thing that he said, send them back on an effing boat. Yeah, the lot of them. But in what way is that relevant to his job? He's done it for 20 years. And even worse, this nurse struck off for her unfashionable opinions, arguably racially motivated opinions. But what have they got to do with her ability to do a job she's clearly done for 40 years with distinction? We are turning into a country where people are being deprived of their livelihoods because of what they think. And I think that's a worrying development.
It is a very worrying development. Clearly, people's personal political opinions ought to be protected. What's happened is we've drifted into a world where there is an acceptable set of political opinions. So if you say that migrants should be deported, Kev, and I'm not saying you did, if let's say a guy called Frank says that migrants should be deported, then Frank is expressing a political opinion. If Frank says migrants are amazing, I wish we had more of them coming, Frank is still expressing a political opinion.
Yeah.
Yet we both know that one of those political opinions is acceptable and one of them is not. And that's the real perversion going on here. For your listeners and viewers, I should flag that there are really good cases coming out of the employment tribunals where they do actually recognise this and where people are winning compensation against their previous employers because, quite rightly, their views are protected. If I have anything to say about these two instances, I'd say that this is the inconsistency we're getting from the tribunal system. It's inherently open to abuse, and we see this now. We've had the 4 Women Scotland case. We know that gender-critical views, as they might be termed, or sex-realist views, are protected in law. We know what a man is and we know what a woman is, yet many employers and public sector employers are defying the law. And I think we're now getting to the point where they're going to face mass lawsuits, like class action lawsuits. But ultimately, we need some sort of court of appeal authority or some higher court authority that can simply guide the employment tribunals to say, no, look, these are privately held political opinions. They were expressed in the workplace. Fine. If you want to ban all political opinions, do so, but use that as a future going forward policy and draft it properly and enforce it fairly against all political opinions, not just the unfashionable ones. And I think we'd be a better country when we get to there. But again, Kev, this is part of the nasty little society we are. This is where people tittle-tattle on their colleagues in order to get some advantage or just for sheer revenge or the sheer glee of it. That's what these nasty socialist societies were like. You know, people would, Churchill says, the shopkeeper would tattle on his rival to get an advantage, where children would report their own parents. You know, this is not a healthy society, and it's certainly not a Britain I recognise.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So if our nurse friend, Roberta Batchelor, had posted on Facebook, what we need in this country is a lot more Muslims. I'd really like a successful Muslim invasion, a cultural takeover. She would still be doing her job, wouldn't she?
Well, we know that she'd probably be the top priority of the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, because their top priority has tweeted and put out on that and into the public sphere absolutely outrageous comments, yet he's not touched at all, is he?
Yeah, I just think it's something that we, as you quite rightly suggest, Stephen, we ought to keep an eye on as a society, because this is the thin end of the wedge. If you start saying it's okay to sack people from skilled jobs for completely irrelevant opinions that they hold, and I'm not saying that you go around and that, you know, if you've got somebody who's a fully fledged Nazi, you know, who wants another Holocaust or something like that, I'm not saying that that kind of person should be looked at very suspiciously, but it strikes me that both Roberta Batchelor and Charles Mackey, whilst their opinions weren't very nice and they didn't express them particularly pleasantly, both of their declarations in terms of their political views were nothing to do with their jobs. It's just that the great and the good, the tribunal, said, oh, well, that's a horrible thing to think. It's quite right that you should lose your job. It's not quite right. It's the opposite of quite right, isn't it?
And it's not applying a legal test. A legal test is simply to say, this is a personally held political opinion, and the tribunal doesn't have to agree with it. It just goes, privately held personal political opinion. You know, are you entitled to it? Yes. Are you entitled to express it? Well, yes, unless absolutely everybody else was denied expression of theirs, in which case you have been unfairly discriminated against and you deserve to win this case. And we just need the tribunal service to get into a much more effective system. I should flag for your listeners and viewers, Kev, that because it's become a bit of a gamble, many of the employers in this situation are preferring to wait it out on the hope that they get a tribunal that just decides for them on some completely spurious ground, and justice in the tribunal system is rather grinding to a halt. It's moving at a ridiculous pace, something like 3 years to get to final hearing.
I'll tell you what I'd like is one of the Roberta Bachelors or the Charles Mackeys of this world, when fired, to hire you to represent them at the tribunal, because I think you'd have a field day, wouldn't you?
Well, it as ever, when you appear in front of judges, they have the ultimate power. And if the tribunal is simply decided to be a non-functioning tribunal, you know, you're not going to get around it, sadly. There is no magic. And remember, they're designed for quick justice. So, and they should deliver quick justice. They're not, but they should deliver quick justice. And then there should be appeals. And we really need an appellate court to step in and just really make it very clear that if an employer allows the expression of any political opinion, and let's be honest, Kev, most of them will, because wearing a rainbow lanyard is a political expression, and most employers allow that to happen. So if you allow any political expression, you have to allow all political expression. It's really very simple.
Exactly. Let's go to break now. When we come back, we'll talk about the shiny new Palestinian embassy, which opened yesterday in Hammersmith in West London. To my mind, that opens up a can of worms. I mean, what about the security? How much is that going to cost the police to monitor that place? A Palestinian embassy, a high security risk. What about the people who live locally? And what's it all for? I mean, I'm saying that, you know, you take a dodgy country or a high-risk country, it's got every right to have an embassy, and we, the British people, should enshrine that, of course. But Palestine isn't a country, nor is it a state. So why have we given it this potentially dangerous embassy in the heart of West London, where people live and work? Why have we done that? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Yes, there's a new building over in Hammersmith in West London, a highly populated area. Lots of people work there, lots of people live there. Very nice part of the world, actually. It is the Palestinian embassy, which opened yesterday. Let's have a little listen to the Palestinian ambassador, Hussam Zomlot, as he hails his new embassy in Hammersmith, London, as a great day for his, quotes, country, close quotes, which it isn't a country, it isn't a state, which is why it's a bit perplexing and bemusing that it has an embassy. But let's have a listen to Mr. Zomlot.
This is a day of hope, a day of steadfastness, and a day that reminds the world that peace is not only possible, it is inevitable, marking a profound milestone in the British-Palestinian relations and in the Palestinian people's long journey to freedom and self-determination, and in the Palestinian people's journey to sovereignty and independence.
The thing is, Stephen, there's several aspects to this. First of all, isn't it kind of weird that we've given an embassy to Palestine when Palestine as a country, as a state, does not exist? What is the point of this? The only result of opening this building, I can see, will be probably, I don't know this for sure, but an extremely arduous police operation, which will have to go 24/7. This is the Palestine embassy. This is going to be a high-risk potential terrorist target, obviously. So it's bad for the police, I would have thought. And if I was a local resident, I know where this building is. It's near some very nice houses. I don't think I'd be too thrilled. So old Starmer's virtue signalling, his anti-Israel virtue signalling, has, I think, opened up a bit of a can of worms in West London, don't you think?
Well, he won't be anywhere near where he lives. And it just won't. These things never are. You're right to point out that we should never have recognised or pretended to recognise Palestine as a state. It's not a state. What is and is not a state is determined by a convention in 1933 called the Montevideo Convention, and there are two limbs of that. I won't bore you any further, but there are two limbs of that the Palestine just doesn't meet. So it cannot be a state, and not unless it leaves Gaza behind, in which case it's just the West Bank, which they wouldn't accept. So the whole thing is just a car crash. To be perfectly honest, this thing is a security risk because, we know that Hamas operated out of Venezuela. Hamas and other prescribed terrorist groups, are they going to be given visas? Are they going to be smuggled in? Are we going to be told that they're the cleaner? What are we going to be told? Why on earth anybody thinks this is a good idea is completely off their rockers, save that there is a small portion of our country which has, and it's usually, Kev, other than the fact that a portion of them are far left nutters and a portion of them are just racist against Jews, but the others who fall into this are usually really nice, sweet people who don't pay that much attention to global affairs and just think that the Palestinians are being hard done by and have a really kind heart and therefore want them to do well. And they will have been misled into thinking that this is a good idea. But anybody who pays the slightest bit of attention, even if you're pro a two-state solution, as I am, you can't see this as helpful. It's not helpful. It's gloating. That man didn't move an inch towards peace. He's just gloating that despite committing 7/7, he's got false recognition of his false state, and now he's got a swinging embassy in the heart of London, and no doubt funds from somewhere.
Yeah, and, of course, we don't want there to be an incident, any terrorism or attacks on that embassy. But it is a risk. It's clearly a high risk. And you think, well, what the hell was Starmer thinking when he decided to, recognise Palestine if you must? A heinous mistake, if you ask me, but that's what he chose to do. When was it? September the 21st last year. What we didn't realise is this would also entail a whole embassy in Hammersmith. That's a very highly populated area. As I say, you say it's not the sort of place where Keir Starmer would live. It actually sort of is. It's a very nice area with very expensive multi-million pound houses. But
it's not where Lord Ali is, Kev.
That's true. But that isn't the point. The point is, you think, well, why is Starmer endorsing the establishment of a building that is a security risk to the people of this country? What is he thinking?
He's not thinking. He's a completely dead on arrival prime minister. He's dead man walking. He has almost no voters. His actual approval rating is 11%. But the people who disapprove are now at something like 70% of the population disapprove of the prime minister. So he's just groping for anybody who might vaguely want to vote for him. And the Palestinian supporters have said, we might vaguely want to vote for him. They won't. They'll go off to your party and the Green Party. Yeah. But he's just so absolutely desperate at this stage that he's going to ignore. I mean, where are the anti-money laundering rules in all of this? Because how did this non-existent state get any funding when it lives entirely off charitable handouts? Those charitable handouts are made for the people of the West Bank and Gaza to make sure they don't starve, not so that their leaders can buy really swanky houses in nice bits of London. The entire thing is a car crash. It's not thought through, Kevin. I'm pretty sure the Prime Minister basically lives now day to day day, desperately trying to survive until the next dawn.
What would you imagine, again, I'm not an expert on this and you probably aren't either, but what would you imagine that an embassy without a country to represent actually does?
Well, they're not. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? What did the leaders of Hamas do? You know, some of them planned terrorist atrocities, but most of them spent their time in 5-star plus hotels in Qatar and lounged by the pool, had a bit of a swim, had some cocktails, had some lunch. You know, that was a lovely, lovely life for them. And I imagine, I mean, it's a terribly cushy job, isn't it, to be the Palestinian ambassador?
I was going to say that guy. Mr. Cosmo has landed a good gig, hasn't he?
And he looked very well manicured and very well dressed.
Very pleased with himself, isn't he? Yeah.
I'm sure he has a lovely day. And because there are enough, lefty actors and celebs who wish to put on a keffiyeh and pretend that they know something about world affairs, he's bound to have his lunch and dinner schedule full every week. I mean, the man's just going to live the life of Riley. But the entire thing is just a disgrace to our country. We're not a serious player on the global stage anymore. We're basically now, I mean, he's bent over to anybody who'll take us. You know, we're a joke country. Well, let's quote Shakespeare. We are a country in jest.
There you go. There you go. At least we are a country, which is more than Palestine can say for itself. By the way, just quickly before we go to break, international law. Am I right that basically international law is what big and powerful countries decide is expedient at any given moment? That's pretty much it, isn't it?
No, so there's a real difference, Kev. So I worked and I'm qualified in private international law, and we made our bit work. The public international lawyers went bonkers with power and have basically tried to use it to sort of run the entire world in their own image.
Okay.
That's what's falling apart. It's not international law itself. If it went back to treaties that people could read, and then a nation saying, I agree to be bound by this treaty for now, and then for the period in which it agreed to be bound by that treaty, it was bound, and then when it said, I don't want to be bound by this treaty anymore, it wasn't bound by the treaty anymore, the system would work. And instead, we've got these massive institutions of self-interest like the UN, the ECHR, the EU that just employ the total non-entities in non-jobs, ridiculous payment, immune from prosecution, immune from civil suit, don't pay tax in the resident country. I mean, it's unbelievable the perks and privileges these people get. And so, of course, they want to pretend that international law is more than it is. And my worry... I discussed this with mates over a decade ago, and I said my worry is that they will push the public so far that the public will just say there's no such thing as international law. There is. It's useful in ways. We shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But yes, these people have got well above themselves. And by the way, Kev, nothing Mr. Trump did was illegal.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? There's always an argument. And Keir Starmer. I mean, if you take the basic tenets of what I think international law is all about, it would strike me that Donald Trump and America may have broken international law by just flying into a foreign country and kidnapping the leader. But then again, after that, you can justify it, I think, on international legal grounds. Insofar as Trump will say this was a narco state posing a danger to American citizens. So, you know, it's a game of words to an extent. But I think the thing about international law is people, you know, old Keir Starmer, for example, is like, I'm a great respecter of international law. It's very, very important. You know, they just bandy around this term, international law. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, international law. Has Trump broken international law? Do you know what I go? I go, what the hell exactly is international law? I'm a normal person who lives on planet Earth, and I live in the real world. You lot live in some kind of political bubble, banging on about nebulous concepts that are meaningless to most of us, as in international law.
Yep, and they've been using it to try and spread communism. That's basically what they've been doing.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, on the UN system of international law, this is like operating systems like Android and Apple and Windows. So on the UN version of international law, you have to argue that he's breached Article 2 and that he's impinged the sovereignty of the state. But actually Article 52 allows him to do so if it's in the interests of international security. And so again, and it's because it's fundamentally it's diplomatic.
Yeah.
So it's not as good as legal text should be very clear, very narrow, very precise, very few words. International law, because it's written by diplomats or public international law, it's just waffle.
It is, yeah. It's a malleable, a movable, rancid feast, I would suggest. But you know what's funny about it is you can see that with every fibre of his body, old Keir Starmer, human rights lawyer, wants to say he's broken international law, but he can't because he's too scared to offend the Donald. Hilarious. When we come back, another legal one for you, Steve. We're going to talk about Shamima Begum and her bid to return to Britain, which has been somewhat boosted by our old friends at the European Court of Human Rights. Isn't that special? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned, folks.
all these distractions like ID cards and so on. Look, they might make a tiny bit of difference around the edges, but that's not going to fix this thing. The people who are trying to come to the UK are very determined. It's now a multi-billion-pound criminal enterprise. The pull factors of the UK always going to be huge. That's a compliment to our country.
Yeah, of course it is.
Millions of people around the world want to come to the UK. The only way you'll fix this once and for all is that everyone is detained and deported. And the sooner that Starmer comes to that conclusion, I don't think he ever will, frankly, but the sooner that he does, the better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Shamima Begum. She's the ISIS bride who in 2015, just over 10 years ago, ran away as a 15-year-old to join the ISIS Caliphate, that mad Islamic death cult over in the Middle East. She joined that. She married an ISIS warrior, had 4 kids. They all died. And when the ISIS Caliphate fell apart, she ended up in a Syrian desert refugee camp. She lives there to this day. She's been trying to come back, but Sajid Javid, soon after her flight from Britain, took away her British citizenship. He revoked her British citizenship. So we're not letting her back. And we thought that was that. There's been several challenges. She's failed every time. Now, out of nowhere, the European Convention on Human Rights, or the European Court of Human Rights, has demanded to know from the Home Office whether or not we in Britain believe we broke child trafficking and human rights laws when we refuse to repatriate this woman. I think Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, said, I'm not having her back here. I think we should just turn around to the ECHR and go, you know, swivel on this, do one. Not answering your question, she's not coming back. What are you going to do about it?
I think we should consider not paying them for this sort of nonsense, to be perfectly honest, Kevin. I mean, a senior KC who I am rather fond of pointed out that this entire thing is just not what we consider courts to be. So our court, you will never find our Supreme Court just writing to the government and asking it questions.
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? And this is this very continental idea that a judge is. It's a bit ironic, Kev, because a lot of people like the show Judge John Deed, but he went around doing all sorts of things that a judge never actually does. It's not what judges do.
To solve the cases himself.
Yeah, you don't go and solve the cases.
I remember that. Yeah.
But that's the continental idea that the judge sort of sticks their beak in and gets involved. And what on earth do they think that they're doing? As far as we're concerned, from our legal tradition, this case is settled. It's been done. Yeah. She's had umpteen appeals. She's had a colossal amount of public money spent upon her. That's it. And if the ECHR really wants to open this, then I think many of us who simply are now fed up to the back teeth of it would probably welcome it, because it really does show why this is a waste of space. This is an office building, quite funky, weird design office building in Strasbourg, full of, and I did a breakdown on my Substack of each of the judges and their backgrounds. Yeah. Almost all of them are just foreign professors. They don't know anything about English law or even about here. Only a couple of them have ever visited. You know, it's just ridiculous. So why you'd let these people be the ultimate arbiters of justice in your country? And particularly this idea that they're just going to keep coming back until they get the answer that they want.
Yes, that's exactly it. They just keep on knocking at the door, and we have not given her citizenship back. We have no intention of doing so, and as such, she's not our concern, and she can't come back. So the ECHR, in my view, should be told to get lost. This is ridiculous, but this will carry on because we are seen as some sort of oppressors who treated this poor kid wrongly. If she came back, admitted, to be fair to her, she says she wants to come back and face trial. Well, I'm told that the security bill for this woman, be she in jail, be she in court, be she at home, will be easily more than £1 million a year. She will be a security risk to this country for the rest of her life, and she will cost taxpayers a fortune for her to be monitored. So she's a terrorist. She's an ISIS sympathiser, and therefore the very notion that we should even think about letting her back in the country is for the birds. It's nonsense.
It does just show how weak we've become. But sadly for Shamima, she will never become the Prime Minister's top priority because she doesn't have access to Twitter. So until she starts tweeting racist things, she'll never be his priority. And it's just a sad truth of the matter that she's yesterday's girl and the Prime Minister's got a new favourite fancy. But the left do have these obsessive tendencies, Kev. It's like the Elgin marbles. You just know they're going to come up again. Oh, you just know it's going to come up again. They will not take no for a no. And that's another one where they have exhausted absolutely every legal angle. There is not a legal argument left to make, and you know it's going to come up again. And this is just part of the left-wing obsessive. I think you should teach your listeners and viewers, if they had given the benefit of the doubt to the European Court of Human Rights, they should take it away. It's just another lefty obsessive institution, and it just wants to hurt our country. I mean, that's all they want to do, these people. If you defend it, it might say, well, they're not lefty, they're just compromised by foreign powers who hate us. And that's the other risk of having a foreign court where you don't know who the judges are and you don't get a say in who they are.
It's a very strong argument for us leaving the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. Get your nose out of our business and let's make it official that you can't stick your nose into our business. But this is indicative of our problems with this foreign court. It is, in the end, legally the sovereign ruler of this country. You can take most grievances to Strasbourg. If every court in the British land rejects your case, head off to Strasbourg, and if it's anti-British, the chances are they'll rule in your favour, right?
Yeah, and it just shows that actually these are fundamentally political questions. You really don't want them to be made by judges. I mean, look, I don't like the pretend court in Strasbourg, but I wouldn't even want these decisions made by our judges. It just cheapens judges. These are political questions and they should be made by politicians. If there's ever a government that wanted to bring Shamima Begum back, they should be allowed to do so, but then they should face public opprobrium and outcry for so doing. One of the problems with making this some sort of foreign court said it's the law is that people don't feel the right to kick off in the streets and complain, but they have every right to kick off and complain. You know, this is just not on, and that's why even Shabana Mahmood realizes that you can't bring Shamima Begum back. It's the ECH. If the ECHR is stupid enough to do this, good, because then everybody will want to leave it.
Yeah, Shabana Mahmood, as the Home Secretary, said the right kind of things. You know, no way, and she's not coming back as far as I'm concerned, which is fine, which is good. I'm glad Shabana's saying that, but I think she should go stronger. You know, I think she should say to the ECHR, how dare you? What has this got to do with you? Go away.
I think Shabana Mahmood's more than happy to say anything, Kev, just like when she fixed illegal immigration and the boats.
Oh,
do you
yeah,
remember
yeah,
that?
that was
yeah,
good,
do you remember
wasn't it?
that? Because she was really tough on that. Do you remember? It was
the migrant crisis
great.
seems like such a long time ago since she solved it last month, doesn't it?
I know, we don't even remember it anymore. It's just, and that's all they've got. But even they know that even if she secretly supports Shamima Begum, as I suspect a lot on the left do,
Yeah, I agree with that.
a lot of them have got the brains to not say it out loud. They don't say the quiet bit out loud, do they?
That's it. You suspect that our Prime Minister is probably rather keen on Shamima Mahmood coming back. Not Mahmood, Shamima Begum coming back. But as you say,
trade them with the Elgin marbles.
I'll tell you what, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Listen, Stephen, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Good to hook up again after the festivities, and we'll be back with you next Tuesday. Stephen Barrett, there, lawyer and barrister, our Tuesday friend. Always good stuff with him. Now, when we come back after the break, we'll be talking to my old friend Greg Swenson. He's over there in Florida. He's, of course, from the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London. We're going to get the latest developments as I said in my monologue, that the latest chapter in that book called Donald Trump Takes Over the World. Big row going on now about some tanker, Venezuelan tanker, heading for Russia, which Donald Trump says he's going to intercept, and he's going to use Britain as a launch pad for that. I wonder what Keir Starmer thinks about that. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in Keir Starmer's office at the moment. He must be going through hoops. What a shame. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. We'll talk to Greg Swenson about Donald Trump and Venezuela next. Stay tuned.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In a little while, we're going to talk to the people of Crowborough, that lovely little East Sussex town, which is about to become home to 540 migrants. The local army training base there to be used as a billeting centre for asylum seekers, 540 of them. People of Crowborough have been furiously protesting every weekend. Now they've voted to install thousands and thousands of pounds worth of CCTV camera equipment in the interests of safety ahead of the arrival of their foreign visitors who will come very soon. We'll talk to one of the local residents there, councillor, and basically ask, why do British people have to live like this? These people in Crowborough have never been consulted. Oh, you're going to get 540 migrants. Pretty little town, East Sussex. Them saying, don't we get a say in this? No, you don't. Now they go, for fears... for the safety of the local community, they're going to have to sort of festoon the entire town with CCTV cameras. As I say, we shouldn't have to live like this, should we? Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. And in half an hour or so, we're going to deal with the intriguing case. Now, we all know about Jack the Ripper's reign of terror during Victorian London times, and now it has emerged that at that same time there was another serial killer. Didn't realise, did you? He was called the Thames Torso Murderer. Used to chop up his victims and chuck them into the Thames. He was almost as bad as Jack the Ripper. Anyway, they think that they've found out who he was. A guy called James Crick, a barge man. Well, we'll talk about that later on, exactly how this case came to define Victorian London, as long with Jack the Ripper. Extraordinary story. We'll talk about that later. And take your calls in about 3/4 of an hour. 0344 499 1000. But in the meantime, let's get back to old Donald Trump and what the hell he's up to now. And let's talk to the chairman of the Republican Overseas Organisation here in UK. He's too often in America these days. He's in Florida at the moment. But a warm welcome to my old friend Greg Swenson. How you doing, Greg?
Great to see you, Kevin. I'm doing well.
Good to see you. Eventful times.
Yeah.
Well, let's just talk about today's development. What are you making of this Venezuelan oil tanker? Well, it's actually registered in Russia, but it's classified as a Venezuelan oil tanker. It's been racing across the Atlantic. The Americans believe it's actually on its way to Russia, no doubt with a very valuable supply of oil, crude oil. And Donald Trump apparently is planning to intercept this tanker off the coast of Ireland in the North Atlantic, and he may well use Britain as a launch pad for this interception. So what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, that would be great to use the UK as the launch pad. God knows Ireland wouldn't allow the US, even though we've been defending them for the last 80 years. But I do think that, look, it's easy enough to change the flag on a tanker. So, you know, if this is Russia, if this is a Russian tanker, if this is a Venezuelan tanker, you know, I would say let's take it. And the President Trump's just, you know, this is part of his common sense revolution. You know, if someone's violating sanctions and selling discounted oil for no benefit to the Venezuelan people, they've been looted. You know, the people of Venezuela have absolutely been looted by
yeah. And what Trump knows, and Chavez before him, yeah, you're absolutely right. What Trump knows also, what we all know now, is that Putin is in big trouble back in Russia on all of this, because the Russian people, Venezuela obviously very friendly to Russia, very friendly to China, Cuba, all of our enemies. And Trump's audacious raid on Venezuela has completely ruined the Russian connection, and the Russian people are going to Putin, you're weak. This is a sign of your weakness and Donald Trump's strength. So if Trump goes for this tanker as well, that will double down on Putin's domestic problems.
Right. And Putin can't really pump any more oil than he's already pumping. And so China, the 60 to 90% of Venezuelan oil goes to China. 85 to 90% of Iranian oil goes to China. So if the Iranian uprising actually works and the invasion of Venezuela actually works, which I think it will, China loses 70% of its oil supply. So this is definitely a move on China, a move on Russia. And you think about who, as you pointed out, Kevin, who's Venezuela in bed with? They're basically occupied, and they were invaded by Russia, China, Iran. I mean, Hezbollah trains in Venezuela. So, this is all interconnected, the oil, the drugs, China, Russia. It's a brilliant move long term by the president. Absolutely brilliant.
Do you think Greenland will be next, or Cuba, or Colombia? Will this?
I think so. I'm surely the people of Cuba would love that. I think the people in Greenland would like independence, but they have 50,000 people. I'm not sure they can defend themselves. I wouldn't count on Denmark to defend them either. But I do think Greenland is the rare earth minerals version of Venezuelan oil. We the U.S. do not need more oil. We have plenty of oil on our own. We're the biggest energy producer in the world, thanks to President Trump. But the rare earth mineral situation, 80% plus, probably closer to 90, is still controlled by Russia and China, mostly China on rare earths and other critical minerals in Russia. So we, the West, are completely dependent on our adversaries for rare earth minerals, and all those net zero fanatics that want to end fossil fuels. They can't do it without critical minerals, and so I think Greenland is probably the next piece of the puzzle. It's important that we, the West, are controlling that. Only the U.S. can defend Greenland. Again, I wouldn't count on Denmark. Not that Denmark doesn't punch above its weight for its size, but the reality is, Denmark has no capability of defending Greenland. So it's up to the U.S., and I think it's bound to happen.
Yeah, and I think Greenland is all about the defense of America as well. Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of window into the Western world for particularly Russian vessels. So it's about defense.
And NATO should love that. This would be better for NATO if the U.S. is controlling those passageways in the Arctic that China and Russia will exploit. Yeah, this is really important for the West, not just for the U.S.
While I've got you, Greg, breaking news from these talks in Paris, the Coalition of the Willing meeting up, and Keir Starmer has paved the way for British troops to be sent to Ukraine, boots on the ground as part of its peacekeeping force. The Prime Minister has signed an agreement dubbed the Paris Declaration to commit the UK to the deployment of forces. They will join French forces in the Ukraine to establish military hubs, presumably. There may be other European forces as well. But you know what's interesting about this? Two things. So it looks as if Britain is going to send soldiers to Ukraine, boots on the ground. France as well. I would imagine other countries from the Coalition of the Willing as well. And yesterday, Trump said about Venezuela, or was it the day before, would you put boots on the ground? He said, we're not afraid to if necessary. It's interesting that the great taboo of the last 20 years, every single conflict, world leaders say, oh, we wouldn't go so far as boots on the ground. Suddenly, they're not shying away from the concept of boots on the ground. Neither Trump nor even, for God's sake, Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would really trust Keir Starmer on that.
On anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so many great memes went around after the Venezuela invasion about Keir Starmer. But I think back to Trump, look, he's always going to keep that as a threat. Will he do it? I highly doubt it. But if he's pushed, this is not Iraq or Afghanistan or Libya or Syria. This is our neighbor. This is, within the Monroe Doctrine. This is really important. So I think the threat of boots on the ground is there, but I don't think we'll need it. Look what happened over the weekend. I mean, if they mess with the U.S. at all, if they don't do what President Trump tells them to do, and Secretary of State Rubio if they don't comply in Venezuela, they'll come back and capture the clowns that take Maduro's place. And I don't think it will require some sort of, Iraq or Afghanistan kind of occupation. They're ready for democracy. They had an election in 2024, and they used to be the richest country in South America. So I think they're really well suited for this. So I don't think it will require any sort of occupation. And if it does, it will be quick and effective.
Excuse me. Here's the problem, I think, from Trump's point of view. You know what they say, basically, this is regime change in Venezuela. Regime change. Okay, great. He's done that. Now what? Then what happens?
Yeah.
That is the problem. I mean, going forward, I'm an approver of what he did. I think it's good to see America showing its strength to these countries. That literally their raison d'etre is to mess around with America, like that idiot Perez in Colombia saying to Donald Trump, "Come and get me." Hey, Perez, careful what you wish for. Careful what you wish for. So I like to see America saying, "Listen, we're the good guys. And we're powerful, and we're gonna and we're gonna show you. We're gonna tell you what to do. We're gonna inflict our power on you to make things right." So I approve of that. However, I can't imagine that going forward, the headline's going to be that great for Trump. I would imagine that, when he just said, "So what are you going to do about Venezuela then, Donald, Mr. President?" "We're going to run it. We're going to run it." It's pretty damn difficult to run any country, certainly a basket case narco state.
Yeah, it's a failed state, and it's going to take a lot of work. But I think the American energy companies will be quite capable of returning economic prosperity to Venezuela if they don't cooperate. If this government that's in place now, which is basically Maduro's government, if they don't cooperate and they don't do what President Trump wants them to do, they'll be eliminated, and they'll be replaced with a democratically elected government. I think there'll be obviously elections anyway. So if this interim government doesn't perform, they'll just accelerate the schedule for the elections and put proper democratically elected government in there. And they're quite capable of that, unlike Iraq and Afghanistan.
And you're over in the States at the moment. What's the feeling among Americans about what's going on with Trump? Because we're hearing that a lot of MAGA people are saying, "Well, you said that it'd be America first and you wouldn't worry about the world, you'd concentrate." But all we've seen out of Donald Trump for the past year or so is international activity. What is the feeling about Venezuela and Trump's increasing tendency to get involved abroad?
Well, it is pretty consistent with America first, because he's looking after America. This will be better for America, will be better for the West and better for the Venezuelan people. So, I know that there are some real true believers on the right. Thomas Massey, for example, good guy, he's a libertarian. And so if your view is we should never get involved no matter what, that's fine, and make that argument and have that conversation. But I think the reality is if we continue to ignore Venezuela, where 8 million people left the country, that's a mass exodus, probably the largest ever, because of the theft of their economy by these drug cartels, starting with Maduro. Look, if we ignore that, it's going to end up on our shores. And it did during the Biden years, because Biden loved Venezuelan immigrants, and people died in America because of it. And so I don't think you can be that that ideological in your opposition to foreign interventions. Again, I don't think this is apples and apples, with Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. I think this is very different. And I think in the long run, it will really work out, and those people will, probably understand that, this had to be done. And I didn't even know half the stuff that was going on in Venezuela till the president started, putting the flotilla together late last year. So no, I think this is a good moment. And look, if there's opposition, and by the way, the Democrats of course are opposing it. So 50% of the country loves it.
They're dedicated.
50% hates it, even though they were saying, I just saw a clip of Karine Jean-Pierre, Biden's press secretary. It didn't age well. It was from, during his term. And she was saying all the same things that Trump is saying about Venezuela. Maduro must go, the democratically elected government should take over. I mean, it's shameless, but if Trump does it, they're against it. It's really not honest and quite hypocritical, actually. So no, they're fired up. And you know who's really fired up are the Venezuelans in Miami and the Cubans in Miami. They're really excited about this. So, you know, red state America is loving it, and blue state America continues to implode. Tim Walz being the latest casualty of blue state America.
Did he lose, or is he?
No, he agreed to not run for re-election because he's getting crushed by this Somali, fraud scandal in Minnesota. But he's been wrecking Minnesota for 8 years.
Yeah.
So this is a good day for Minnesota.
Tampon Tim, the one who put tampons into schoolboys' bathrooms.
Yeah. Lockdown Tim. I mean, $5 billion of taxable income has left Minnesota since he took over. I mean, he's just pathetic. And so there might be hope for that blue state, but the rest of the blue states, like mine, my states of Illinois and New York, continue to tailspin. But coming down to Florida, it's red state heaven down here, Kevin.
Yeah, I bet. Among Kamala Harris's many mistakes, Tim Walz was probably the biggest. I'll just tell you a quick story. I don't know if you picked up on this. So this guy, Nicolas Maduro, currently in a New York penitentiary, along with his wife, Celia
Nice
Flores. Yeah, lovely people. I mean, she makes him look like a choir boy. I mean, she is the Lady Macbeth of this story. They got married, these two, in 2013. They've been together for 2 decades, 20 years. And they didn't get married because that's bourgeois and they're communists. But they got married in order to increase her sphere of influence, her political power. And the moment they got married, she appointed 40 of her family members to the government. I mean, corruption, it's off the scale. Anyway, here's a story of her. I don't know if you picked up on this, which is sort of indicative of the different approach to, shall we say, rogue states by Donald Trump and Joe Biden. In 2015, 2 of Flores' nephews were charged in New York with major cocaine trafficking. They were arrested in Haiti and brought to New York. A load of people quipped her, well, they're drug dealers. Not all of her family can work in the government. But seriously, so they got 18 years in 2017 for major cocaine trafficking into America. A lot of people would say it was clearly a family business, but we await the American justice system to decide whether or not Ms. Flores is guilty of a similar offence, but she's been charged with it. Anyway, they got 18 years. 5 years later, they walked free. Guess why? Joe Biden did a deal to release them in return for the release of 7 Americans detained in Venezuela. So there's a story of the difference between...
I did hear that, and it's difficult. I mean, most everything that President Biden did was a disaster, right? He tried his best to wreck this great country, and he failed, which is, I'm glad. But, the hostage swaps are difficult. Look what the poor Israelis have to do. They get one IDF soldier back, and they get 200 convicted terrorists, released, and then they come back and bomb their pizza parlors, Yeah. It's really horrible. And so, that's not a swap that I would want to do. But, Biden was incompetent. So if it was a bad trade, I'm not surprised.
Exactly right. Well, fascinating situation. I wonder what will happen with that Venezuelan tanker off the coast of Ireland right now, and what will happen going forward. As we say, Greg, Happy New Year, by the way, and may we live in interesting times, which we damn well do, don't we?
I'll be back in London at the end of the month.
I'll buy you a drink, mate. Okay, look forward to seeing you. All the best, Greg. Greg Swenson there, chairman of the Republican Overseas Organisation in London, but he's over in Florida at the moment, as you heard. And when he talks about a red state, by the way, I'm sure you all know, but for some reason we invert our political colours. In America, the red colour denotes right-wing. So in other words, if the Tories would be red if they were in America, blue denotes left-wing. So the Democrats are blue and the Republicans are red. Over here, of course, it's the other way around. Just in case you didn't realise that. I'm sure you did. Right, of course you did. You're very intelligent people, unlike me. Right, let's go to break, shall we? And when we come back, we're going to talk about the beleaguered town, the lovely East Sussex town of Crowborough, where 540 migrants are about to move in the local army training base, despite the extreme protests, the passionate protests of the local people who say they've never even been consulted. And they're now going to shell out thousands of pounds on CCTV cameras, surveillance equipment to try to keep the streets safe when the asylum seekers arrive. As I said earlier, I mean, my basic question is, why do people in this country shouldn't have to live like this, should they? They never got asked. Now they've got to put in CCTV cameras, fears for the safety of the local community. What is going on? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about that next.
These distractions like ID cards and so on, look, they might make a tiny bit of difference around the edges, but that's not going to fix this thing. The people who are trying to come to the UK are very determined. It's now a multi-billion-pound criminal enterprise. The pull factors of the UK are always going to be huge. That's a compliment to our country. Yeah, millions of people around the world want to come to the UK. The only way you'll fix this once and for all is that everyone is detained and deported. And the sooner that Starmer comes to that conclusion, I don't think he ever will, frankly, but the sooner that he does, the better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
In a little while, we're going to talk about the curious case of the Thames torso murderer, a serial killer who brought terror to London at the same time as Jack the Ripper. So we're talking about the 1880s, Victorian London. The Thames torso murderer has been forgotten in the realms of history, but his case has come to the fore again because historians think they've solved it. They think they know who did it because it was the perpetrator of these terrible murders where the victims were chopped up and chucked into the Thames, big bits of their body, was never found. But they think they know who did it now. He's not alive anymore, so I guess he got away with it, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But first, let's talk about Crowborough, the lovely picturesque town in East Sussex, where it has an army base in it that will soon be home to 540 migrants. The local residents have been mounting passionate protests weekend after weekend, thousands and thousands of people saying, you know, we haven't got the infrastructure for this. This will render our town a town of terror. This will be fear-struck. Nobody has listened to them. Nobody has listened. Yeah, put up with it. They have now voted, the Crowborough Council, to install thousands of pounds worth of CCTV cameras and surveillance equipment around the town to keep the street, in a bid to keep the streets safe. But the question has to be, why do people have to live like this? Why hasn't anybody spoken to these people? Why is this just being imposed on them? Let's speak to Wealdon District Councillor for Crowborough, Andrew Wilson. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's very nice to be here.
Well, tell me about this story. I mean, you know, today's story is that the councillors voted to spend, I think, £16,000 on CCTV cameras, surveillance equipment, you know, which, of course, is very sensible because you're about to be invaded by 540 unknown migrant foreigners. But my question is, you know, as I said, as far as I understand it, the residents of this local area have never been consulted once. You've just been told basically to put up and shut up. They've paid no attention to your extremely impressive, massive protests every weekend. So and now you have to take steps to keep, you know, your women and children and everybody safe. The question has to be, Andrew, doesn't it? Why do you have to live like this? We shouldn't have to live like this, should you?
Well, I mean, just for context, Kevin, so I sit on Wealdon District Council, and this news broke publicly, and I found out the same day that it broke publicly on October the 28th. I sit and I'm the chair of Wealdon's Scrutiny Committee, and we had the Home Office in front of that committee on November the 10th. Sorry, October the 28th was when the news broke, and November the 10th was when the Scrutiny Committee happened. And we questioned the Home Office on their assessment of risk, their assessment on community impact, and they said they were doing a community impact assessment, and they said they would send it to the council. I have not seen that assessment, and we're almost 2 months along from that. So, you know, Crowborough Town Council's decision to reinstate CCTV, I think, is a prudent step. I mean, it's proactive. You don't wait for an incident to happen before you put measures in place. And admittedly, they will be deterrent measures because it's not live CCTV. It's not monitored. So it will be evidential, if anything. But to your question as to why do we have to live like this, I don't think we should have to live like this. And if it were up to me, if I was in government, I would get a grip on the upstream problem of the boats, because their inability to get a grip on that problem has created the downstream issue that we see today in towns like Crowborough. And let's not beat about the bush here. This is coming to a town near you. The Home Office has got no control over this, and they have 2,000 other sites that they have identified where they want to put illegal migrants. And that's their phrasing, not mine. You know, these people, they enter the country illegally. The Home Office calls them illegal migrants. They say they are furious with the use of hotels and they want to put them in alternative accommodation. But they're confused because on the one hand, they're saying they want to put them in camps. On the other hand, you know, we've had recent news that they want to build council houses for asylum seekers. So, you know, which is it? Do we want to deter people from coming here, or do we want to offer them a free house?
The other thing's going on, Andrew, is quietly they're still commissioning hotels. They're still going around snapping up hotels to put migrants in. So that situation is far from ended. But you're saying that the only real communication between the Home Office and the people of Crowborough, the Crowborough Council and people like yourself, has been the promise by the Home Office to provide you with an impact assessment, but they haven't provided that.
So
that's it, is it?
It's in a word, yes. I mean, I'm not aware of any direct correspondence between the Home Office and Crowborough Town Council, and in terms of the District Council, on which I sit, there has been very limited correspondence between the Home Office. In fact, their continued line is that they haven't made a decision to use Crowborough Camp, which conflicts with the reality on the ground when we see contractors going in there and doing huge amounts of work every single day, and their initial move date was the end of November. Just before Christmas, they said they wouldn't be moving anyone into, in the new year, before the new year, sorry. So we're just waiting in anticipation, and we are sitting literally. It's a vacuum of information. It's a dearth of information. We do not know what the Home Office plans to do, because they maintain they haven't made a decision, yet they're spending public money in the camp, and the local community, including Crowborough Town Council, is having to make their voice heard and take preventative measures or proactive measures to secure the security of the town. The last thing I'd say on the security is that the Home Office promised additional police funding, and last I heard they hadn't provided any indication as to what that kind of police funding would be. And that's significant because Crowborough sits in Sussex, and Sussex is a huge county. Crowborough is at the extreme north of the county, right on the edge of the kind of policing envelope. So CCTV is important, and police response times are 20, 30, 40 minutes. So if incidents happen, I don't know how the police are going to cope.
Yeah, how many people live in Crowborough, Andrew?
It's about 22,000 people, Kevin.
So 22,000 people, you say 22,000 residents, and you suddenly say there's 550 foreigners are moving in. We talk about
all male,
well. Yeah, young males. They like to say young males of military age. A lot of people prefer the classification of sexually active age, because that is the crux of all of this. They're usually between the age of about 16 and 34. As you say, all male. You haven't had an impact assessment from the government, but I think we can both amateurishly deliver our own impact assessment. 550 people on a community of 22,000, 550 young men, most of whom won't even speak English. The impact is going to be profound, isn't it?
Well, if you just assume a 50-50 split of males to females in the town, you're talking about a 5% increase in the male population of the town, and that's the entire male population of all ages. It's probably a fairly significant increase in the 18 to 30-year-old population of the town. Evidence from elsewhere in the country suggests that there will be a problem, or there is a strong potential for a problem to occur. We have schools, we have a bus stop just outside the camp gate, which goes to the north, Tunbridge Wells, and to the south, Uckfield, and onwards to Brighton. And that bus stop is used by children every single day going to school. We're a rural town. Street lighting is limited to the centre of the town, and then you have your sort of standard street lighting. So security is an issue. This is not a remote place in terms of the camp's location to the town. It's a mile away, and every Sunday, as you said, the town's population walk from the camp to the town, and it takes about half an hour. So we're not in the middle of nowhere, but we are by no means infrastructurally abundant. So there's not a lot of things for people to do. And as you said, it's a non-detained camp. And my understanding from the Home Office and talking to them is that all of asylum accommodation in the UK is non-detained, wherever it is, whether it be a house.
That's true. That much I know. Yeah.
Yeah, house or an HMO or a hotel or an army camp. And this is not a barracks. It's referred to in the press sometimes as a barracks. It's not a barracks. It's a training camp. It was used by cadets. It was not a garrisoned army barracks like you'd expect in Tidworth or somewhere like that. So it is remote. It's unsuitable for them. It creates a risk to the town, and the town is making its voice heard. Opposition is partly due to safety and partly due to the unsuitability of the location. And then everything in between, the impact on the community. The impact on the young community has been significant, given that the cadets have been moved out of that camp.
Yeah.
And that's a nationally significant cadet training facility. So I don't want it here. I want the government to get a grip of the borders, but whilst they can't, it's left to the community to do what they can to mitigate the impact of government failure.
Well, Andrew, I wish you all the best, and thank you very much for talking to us. I'm sure we'll talk again. Andrew Wilson there, Wealdon District Councillor for the town of Crowborough in East Sussex, where 540 migrants will soon descend to live in the army training camp. Government says it hasn't made a decision yet, but it has. Clearly has. They're getting it ready. Those migrants are coming. What do you think about this? I mean, the government just going around the country just saying, right, you're going to get migrants, you have 500 here, 200 there, a street full of them there, houses of multiple occupation, hotels. I mean, we're not even getting a say in all of this. What do you think? 03444991000. Let's go back. Let's go straight to break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that extraordinary serial killer story from Victorian London, the Thames Torso murders. That next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Yes, let's talk about the Thames Torso murders. A warm welcome. He's a man of many talents. He is, for this story, the author of A London Peculiar, A Guide to London's Secret Past. Rafe Heidel-Manku. Welcome, Rafe.
Pleasure. Happy New Year, Kevin.
Happy New Year to you. And I didn't realise you were an expert on this. You're an expert on virtually everything. And I mean that in a very admiring way. So this is the story of the Thames Torso murders, which were going on pretty much at the same time as Jack the Ripper's reign of terror in Victorian London. So we know about what Jack the Ripper was up to. He was 5 brutal murders in the Whitechapel area, mostly of prostitutes, all of whom were horribly mutilated. Meanwhile, lost in the mists of time, but no doubt making headlines back then, was the Thames Torso murderer, who was murdering women, I think, and chopping them up and chucking their body parts into the Thames. So this story was going on at the same time. It's a 139-year-old case. And according to Lucy Worsley, the TV historian, in her new series Victorian Murder Club, the case, she believes, has been solved She thinks it was a guy called James Crick, who was a barge man with a history of violence, who went to jail for a while. There were no torso murders for a period of time when he was in jail. Then there was another one. Then he died and he never got nicked. So he got away with it like Jack the Ripper. But I didn't realise, I think very few people realise that when Jack the Ripper was at work, so was the torso murderer. Extraordinary.
Yes, I mean, everyone regards Jack the Ripper as the original, modern serial killer, the granddaddy of all those who came later, except, of course, he wasn't, because a year earlier than him, Jack the Ripper started in 1888. The Thames torso murder started a year earlier in 1887. He killed, canonically, 4 women. Jack the Ripper killed 5, some say a bit more. But actually, there are suspicions that he killed many more people than he did between 1887 and 1889. They think he may have been killing from 1873 down to 1902. Here, where I am, a stone's throw away on the river in Battersea, in Vauxhall, but also further down in Whitechapel as well. Quite diabolical, probably more grisly, actually, than Jack the Ripper. For a while, they tried to link Jack the Ripper and the Thames torso murders because they happened at the same time. But of course, the modus operandi was very different. Jack the Ripper would, mutilate women's stomachs and abdomens and genitals, whereas this chap was dismembering people. And there was another murderer at this time. London was a rather
Blimey.
place then. There was a chap called George Chapman, who was the poisoner of Borough in South London.
Right here.
And they killed, right where
Talk is,
broadcasting from. And they tried to link him with it, but of course, a poisoner and a dismemberer are rather different. But all 3 of these characters were roaming the streets of London. And it is a fascinating story. The person that has been identified by Lucy Worsley is this chap, James Crick. And what happened was the historian working with Worsley simply looked through records of men who had been arrested for committing violence against women. And what happened was he was a bargeman. They basically travelled on the River Thames at a time when the roads were very bad. You had lightermen dealing with good transport and watermen dealing with the transport of passengers. And he had an unfortunate woman who came onto his boat. He said he would deal with her as he had dealt with many other women before on the Thames. Took her under Tower Bridge, where she managed to hit him with a piece of iron. Someone came to her rescue. As you said, he was arrested, sent to prison for 8 years. And during those 8 years, there were no murders. And then when he was released, there was one final murder in 1902 down the river for me in Vauxhall.
That's right.
And he died shortly after that. So quite a macabre story.
1907 he died, yes. Well, let's have a quick look, if you don't mind, Rafe, at Lucy Worsley on her documentary Victorian Murder Club. It was on the BBC last night.
This is the extraordinary, forgotten story of a Victorian serial killer. I'm hunting that murderer down. Is this the Thames torso murderer?
So, Rafe, do you agree with Lucy Worsley and her accomplices in this investigation that it was probably James Crick? It does seem the circumstantial evidence seems strong.
But that's just it. It's circumstantial. I mean, he's a very compelling candidate. He certainly goes to the top of the list. But unless we have some sort of signed confession or some DNA connection, then we'll have to wait for that. At least they haven't done what they did with Jack the Ripper and start bringing in, the eldest son of Edward VII or the Queen's surgeon or Walter Sickert, the British painter. Most of these murders are committed by ordinary Joes. The sensationalism of Jack the Ripper, of course, has brought in every member of the establishment, including Freemasons. At least this is a far more likely candidate to have been someone who would have committed that. Interestingly, of his 4 known murders, only 1 was ever identified, whereas, of course, all 5 of Jack the Ripper's victims were named, and in fact their graves are there to this day where people can go and visit.
And do you have a theory as to who Jack the Ripper was?
Well, actually, as I said, there have been all these candidates. Montague John Druitt was another teacher and barrister, but actually we may now finally have the answer because of DNA. One of these ripperologists, a ripperologist is an expert in Jack the Ripper, he bought a shawl from Catherine Eddowes, who was the 4th victim of Jack the Ripper. She was killed on the same day as Elizabeth Stride.
Right.
Stride wasn't mutilated because someone interrupted Jack the Ripper, so he fled. And in frustration of not having been able to do his dirty deeds on Elizabeth Stride, he found Catherine Eddowes, mutilated her. Her shawl, which was bloodstained, came up for auction. This chap purchased it, and there was also on this shawl the DNA of one of the top suspects in the 19th century, Aaron Kosminski, a Polish butcher.
I've read about him, the Polish butcher. Okay, yeah, go on.
And also called Leather Apron, and he essentially had his DNA was there. So either, because she was the prostitute, either he had had a dalliance with her, or he could very well be Jack the Ripper. But it has to be said, it's not the best type of DNA, but it still is. I mean, so, you know, there could be thousands of people with that same DNA, but in that area at this time, I think this could be finally the answer that we're looking for.
Extraordinary. And what an extraordinary story that at the same time as Jack the Ripper, there was another serial killer, and you're saying there was yet another, 3 of them at work at the same time. And we thought the streets of London were dangerous now. Thank God we weren't around then. Rafe, really good to talk to you, and once again, Happy New Year. Rafe Heidelmanku, author of A London Peculiar, A Guide to London's Secret Past. Extraordinary story. Right, let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to take your calls. What do you want to ring about? What's Trump up to? Do you think that Keir Starmer will let Trump use Britain as a launch pad for this raid that we think is going to happen on this Venezuelan oil tanker off the coast of Ireland? I say it's Venezuelan, it's actually registered in Russia, but it's to a Venezuelan vessel. Which apparently is on its way to Russia, full of oil, so Trump's going to stop it. Do you think that Keir Starmer will let him do this? But I'll tell you what I would like to hear from you about is this whole business, what we led the show with, this extraordinary system called community resolution, where hundreds of rapists and paedophiles and sex offenders are getting let off every year. Last year, there were over 500 sex offences were resolved by the perpetrator, the actual sex offender, just saying sorry to his or her victim. Just saying sorry to the victim. That's called community resolution. And it's not always, the victim doesn't always agree to it. They just have it imposed on them. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Rape, child sex abuse being resolved by the perpetrator, the sex criminal, the sex offender saying sorry. That's it. Don't you think paedophilia, child sex abuse, rape, grooming offences, don't you think that deserves, warrants a little more than an apology? And don't do it again. Let me know what you think about that. 0344 499 1000. Also, Shamima Begum. Should she be allowed back into this country ever? What do you think of the ECHR asking whether or not Britain broke child trafficking or human rights laws? The ECHR, European Court of Human Rights, sticking its nose into our business again. Let me know what you think about this. Also, after 9 o'clock, we'll be discussing whether or not, as Keir Starmer said yesterday, diversity is Britain's strength. Is it? Do you think diversity is one of our great strengths? Or do you perhaps think the opposite? I like the idea of diversity. I like the idea of multiculturalism. But looking around me at this country now, I don't see what you can conclude apart from it's not working. So is diversity our strength or is our biggest problem? 0344 499 1000 or anything else you want to call about, let me know. Crowborough, the people of Crowborough, why should they have to live like this? Why won't the government talk to them? They're going to get 540 migrants imposed on them at their local army training camp. And as Andrew Wilson, my guest, my local councillor, said, this is coming soon to a town near you. Don't look at Crowborough and go, oh, that's that place. That's somewhere else. Don't have to worry about that, because they'll come for you next. This is happening all over the country. 100,000 asylum seekers all over the country, 30,000 of them in hotels, but more and more in army bases. Why should we have to live like this? How long is this going to go on for? How long are our towns going to be invaded by undocumented foreigners? 03444991000. Let's go to break. Your calls next. Stay tuned.
Distractions like ID cards and so on. Look, they might make a tiny bit of difference around the edges, but that's not going to fix this thing. The people who are trying to come to the UK are very determined. It's now a multi-billion-pound criminal enterprise. The pull factors of the UK are always going to be huge. That's a compliment to our country. Yeah, millions of people around the world want to come to the UK. The only way you'll fix this once and for all is that everyone is detained and deported. And the sooner that Starmer comes to that conclusion, I don't think he ever will, frankly, but the sooner that he does, the better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Get your calls in. Let me know what you think about this business called the Community Resolution System, whereby rapists, paedophiles, child sex abusers get away, walk away scot-free, no punishment, nothing, just by saying sorry to their victims. That's crazy, if you ask me. Let's talk to Grace in Ealing, who also has strong opinions about this. Welcome, Grace. Happy New Year to you. What are your views on this?
Happy New Year to you too. I hope you had a good break. Yeah, as an aside, I obviously really believe in forgiveness as a Christian, but it's kind of predicated on being genuinely repentant, and the judicial system is not going to know a person's heart in the way that God does, and the judicial system has a really important role in keeping the public safe as much as is possible, and in deterring people from crime as much as is possible, and in showing concern for victims. And so I'm really concerned about how just ignoring the basic justice could damage all of those things.
Yeah, I'll tell you what worries me about this, Grace, is it strikes me that what we're looking at here is a system of convenience. This is a system by which the police will mark down, yeah, we've dealt with that. That's been settled. That case is now over. We've done that. They're sort of shirking their responsibility, I think. Initially, apparently, the community resolution system was to resolve minor crimes, extremely minor crimes, involving a victim. But apparently, you know, the sort of purview, the remit has widened and widened and widened. And now both the police and the Crown prosecution are sanctioning hundreds of these cases every year. We're talking about 10 or 11, 12 cases every single week of perhaps paedophile sex offenders, rapists. You know, there were 4 cases last year of flat-out child rape where the perpetrators were allowed to get away with saying sorry to their victims. I'm assuming that would involve the victim's parents. But that is shocking and wrong, isn't it?
It's completely wrong. I mean, I don't understand why there's not being more said about castration for these people. But also, the idea that the victim might be responsible. How is a young person supposed to cope with the pressure of saying, yes, I forgive them or not? That's outrageous.
Yeah, but here's worse than that, though, Grace. I agree with you entirely there. But what the police say about this is, they said it normally, that's the key word, involves the consent of the victim. So the victim has to agree to be apologised to by the person who abused them, who raped them, who sexually assaulted them. But they say normally. So that means there are cases where they are not asked. So that could be a child gets raped and the rapist gets away with just saying sorry, and the victim had nothing to do with this resolution. They just had to put up with it. We have to end this system, don't we?
Yeah, it doesn't bear thinking about. And like I said, even if the victim did supposedly agree to it, the victim could very well feel that they have to. They could feel under pressure. They could feel coerced. I know myself as someone who has all kinds of obsessive compulsive things going on, that you can quite often feel you have to do something that you don't necessarily want to do. And if you've been through the trauma of sexual abuse or rape, it doesn't bear thinking about. But ultimately, the state is supposed to help make society safer. Now, it is the case that some criminals absolutely can be reformed to some. Well, anyone can, in theory, but this is not the way. This is not. The way
I mean, if it's rape, child sex abuse, serious sex offences, I'm afraid there has to be a punishment. That's called a deterrent. We have to deter people from doing this, and just getting them to say sorry, that's just not adequate. It really is not. Grace, I've got to go, but always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your call, as always. Grace in Ealing there. We're going to go to break now. When we come back, we're going to debate whether or not diversity is indeed, as Keir Starmer says, Britain's great strength. Or is it our weakness? That next. Stick around.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Taking your calls in about 20 minutes. 0344 499 1000. Anything you like, but perhaps you want to talk about, you might want to ring about what we're going to discuss now. Yesterday, the Prime Minister talked about to be British is to be diverse. That is the essence of being British. Is it? He also, of course, implied, he said it before, that diversity is Britain's strength. The King Charles is very fond of saying that diversity is our strength. Now, I like the idea, I keep saying that, I mean, I like the idea of a diverse community, I like the idea of a diverse country, I like the idea of multiculturalism. But looking around me today at this country, the asylum seeker crisis and so many other problems involving, shall we say, our cultural dilution, you have to say, well, is diversity our strength, or is it actually becoming a bit of a weakness? Is it a strength, or is this just a cliche by the bien pensant Guardian reading classes? It's a good thing to say, but is it the case? To debate this from both sides of this fence is writer and political commentator James Mathewson. Welcome, James. And also writer and broadcaster Emma Trimble. Welcome, Emma. Well, let's do men first, in the interests of
very diverse, are you, Kevin?
Exactly, modernity. Exactly, James. Men first. Your feelings. I mean, we got you on because we thought that you might agree that diversity is Britain's strength. If that is the case, explain why.
Oh, you got me on because you liked me.
That as well, of course.
This is DEI gone mad, Kevin. You're only giving me the job because I tick a certain box. Yeah. But you see, the thing is, when we talk about diversity, what we forget, I think, a lot of the time is what people hear when they hear diversity is either about race, or it's about culture, or it's about one of those things. Diversity isn't everything. It's in absolutely everything. And it's a good thing. And this is why I've been so frustrated with the language and the attacks on things like DEI, because if it wasn't for things like DEI, I wouldn't be sat here before you today. I'm from a working class household. I'm from a single parent household. I didn't grow up with very much. I didn't go to university. People like me don't end up in politics. I ended up in politics by accident. And a lot of the time when that happens, it only happens because somebody has said, we need more people like you, or we need more people like you at the table to try and give a diverse range of opinions. And the only other thing I would say as well is the reason diversity is so important is because people's lives are very, very different from life to life. And without that experience and without lived experience at the table, often things get overlooked. If you think about streets in Britain or highways, right? If you're somebody who walks down a street in Britain and you're blind or you're deaf, something like that, and somebody who doesn't have an understanding of your challenges isn't at the table or isn't able to give a perspective on why the street needs to be designed a certain way, then you end up with a world that is designed for one type of person and one type of person alone. So it's our strength overall. We should lean into it.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you on that, but let's bring Emma in. I mean, I agree in principle with what James was saying. As I said, I like the idea of multicultural society. Diversity sounds very good. But I think we have to dwell in the real world. And looking around me, Emma, it doesn't seem to me as if multiculturalism is a triumph. Diversity, arguably, is not our strength at the moment, given the many cultural problems we're experiencing. It is our weakness. What do you feel?
Well, you know, Kevin, I know you and I agree that free speech is important. And when you have freedom of speech and when you have liberty, of course, you end up with diversity of opinion. And that is a good thing. However, those freedoms, those liberties that we have come from a very specific and distinct culture that has developed on these islands over the course of 1,000 years and some. And, you know, that is coming from a very specific cultural place. And the issue that we have, and when we talk about diversity actually being a weakness. What we're talking about is the fact that because of our open doors policy, we've allowed in people from other countries that are not as tolerant as us, that are coming from cultures that have aggressive attitudes towards women, for example, or perhaps have problems with anti-Semitism. And that's how you end up with many of the situations that we have seen here in the UK, including, as we saw, with a man called Jihad going into a synagogue and trying to kill Jews on Yom Kippur and succeeding in killing one person. So, we can say that diversity of opinion is a good thing, liberties are a good thing, but you can't have those things limitlessly if you're allowing in all sorts of people into your country. People like to talk about intersectionality. Well, what if you're bringing in lots of people who would like to attack those, for example, from the LGBT community? So, these are very difficult issues that have arisen from this mistaken experiment in multiculturalism.
James, your thoughts on that? I mean, I think what Emma's saying is, agreeing with me in a way, it's a nice idea, but looking around us in practical terms, multiculturalism and diversity are not exactly triumphant for us at the moment, are they?
I find it fascinating that we could say that, to be honest, and that we could blame those things on multiculturalism or diversity. And the fact that conservatives and people to the right of politics would all of a sudden ally themselves with the LGBT community when it comes to trying to put down a different group, that always fascinates me, that debate. People say, why don't you go to Gaza, and see how their rules are on LGBT issues. These are the same people who don't want to give trans people the recognition that they deserve as a community. So it fascinates me that would be an argument anyway. But also when it comes to it, I mean, Emma, I believe last time you and I were on a debate, I think it was on a different network, but we were talking about religion, and I believe you're a Christian, is that right?
I am, yeah.
So the diversity in our country that is our strength is that you're a Christian and I'm not, right? We're both born in the UK, we're both white, right? You're a Christian, I'm not. I don't believe there is a God. You believe that when you die, whatever's going to happen and that there's a God and you follow the teachings of Christ. Jesus Christ, what do you think that man would think about our treatment and our conversation and our rhetoric when it comes to asylum seekers and to refugees? What do you think Jesus Christ would think of that?
Go on then, Emma. What would Jesus say about our rhetoric when it comes to the migrant crisis? I would suggest that our rhetoric is born of a kind of concern. We're a little worried about what's happening to this country. Thousands.
I don't remember that being in the New Testament, though, Kevin.
Well, I'm saying that Jesus, I believe, Emma will confirm, was a reasonable man. He might see that the...
No, he wasn't. He was a radical.
Let's not argue about what kind of a guy Jesus was. That's not what we're here for. But I mean, what we're talking about here, Emma, is it not? Is that the reality of what we're seeing is causing a lot of cultural problems. We have big problems in the north in terms of, our increased... Well, you know what I'm talking about. Muslim towns. The more, increasingly...
Muslim towns?
Yeah.
I don't know a single Muslim town in Britain. Name one, Kevin.
Rochdale.
All right, all my mates from Rochdale are white.
Well, it doesn't mean it's not a Muslim town.
It's not a Muslim town. How can a town be Muslim any more than a town could be Christian? Do you know how many churches
there are? Or shall we say towns with extreme Muslim influence?
No, extreme Muslim anything. Listen, the population...
Emma, would you like to get involved in this conversation? James, if you just let the lady talk for a second.
Kevin.
All right, enough. Kevin. Emma.
I would, yes. Thank you, Kevin, for enforcing the manners in the conversation. Look, I think your point about you being an atheist and me being a Christian, that isn't what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the fact that there are people within this country, there are groups of people who hold intolerant or regressive views. One example, would be the way that Sharia courts are known to treat women and the way that they are known to undermine women's rights. Now, the problem is that if you have a society that finds it so difficult to even defend the legitimacy of protecting certain people's rights, of protecting one group from another because we must tolerate this person's intolerance, that leads to a problem. Now, this is a genuine weakness within liberal democracy. And that's not to say that liberal democracy is a bad thing. the best system that we've got. But it is an Achilles heel of a liberal democracy, that liberal democracies find it very difficult to draw a line when it comes to tolerance. And if you have an open border and you live in the naivety that every culture is the same, that every culture is as tolerant and freedom loving as we are, what you end up with is a situation where you have some groups which are extremely anti-Semitic, who are bringing their anti-Semitic attitudes from abroad, people who are coming and bringing their misogynistic attitudes from abroad, people who are coming and bringing their anti-homosexuality views from abroad. Now, whether or not somebody agrees with you or not on the issue of trans, for example, is not to say that you are not being hypocritical by not recognizing that intersectionality is a completely flawed idea, because you cannot have allies between groups who hate homosexuals and groups who it is not a system that can possibly.
The only people I've met who voiced hatred against homosexuals in the past year, for example, when taking part in debates, have been conservative Christians who are all white.
You are living in cloud cuckoo land. You're not debating the views of many.
About? No, I'm debating on conservative news media, and I'm debating people like you, Emma. And without pointing out very clearly, I don't think you're a Muslim. I don't think you came here from abroad.
And are you saying the people who are coming? Are you saying the people who are coming from Afghanistan are not coming with regressive views about women and about homosexuals?
I believe that your views are regressive.
Well, hang on. Answer the question, Jay. Answer the question, Jay. Answer the question that Emma just asked.
Which question?
Do you believe that the people coming from Afghanistan do not hold views that are repressive towards women and indeed gay people? You believe that everybody who comes from Afghanistan is really cool about women. They believe women are completely equal, and they're really cool about gay people as well. Yeah, you believe that? You believe that? Do you believe that? Do you believe that?
No.
Oh,
that's
good.
Not what I said.
So there you go. So we bring these people into the country. You say diversity is our strength. We are importing prejudice. That means diversity is not our strength. It's our weakness, right, Emma?
Can I
just say quickly?
Well, no, you can't. It's Emma's turn.
Because it's a false equivocation. What you're trying to say is that every single person who comes into a country is of the same mindset and opinion.
No, but some of them are.
Listen,
a fairly high percentage of them from Afghanistan.
That's ridiculous. The three of us.
Hang on a second, James. You're just trying to win this argument by shouting your head off. The fact is, the fact is, Emma is saying that we are importing prejudices from countries.
Prejudices we don't need to import.
Yes, exactly. So if we import them, if we are importing them, it means diversity is not our strength. It is a problem, right, Emma?
We have the prejudices here already.
Well, you've got to accept that people that we are importing from these Middle Eastern countries, from these foreign cultures, hold very repressive views about women and about homosexuals. Right, Emma?
Week after week after week, we've seen people out in the streets chanting "Khyber, Khyber, Ya Yahud," which is a war chant that is talking about the slaughter of Jews. We see people marching, saying anti-Semitic slogans week after week after week. We've seen Jews attacked, not just in this country, but in other countries abroad. These are attitudes that are fairly common in other countries. And you cannot deny that there are countries around the world that every leftist is happy to talk about rape culture and misogyny when it comes to any Western country, but is very hesitant to talk about it.
I'll talk about it in every country.
Yeah.
Okay, well, fine. Then you admit that those people who are coming from those other countries are not leaving their culture at the door when they come in. Now, the point about whether or not diversity is a strength is not to say that no diversity is a strength. It's not to say that diversity of thought, that freedom of religion, that liberties are in any way a weakness. They're not. But they are a weakness if you have an open door policy and you don't have any means of legitimately...
The idea that this is linked solely to multiculturalism is ridiculous. I mean, this is the whole point here, Emma. Look, you would see this country. You believe. Let me finish. You believe.
You didn't let her finish.
You believe that this country is a white Christian nation. It is not. It simply is not, because you and I do not agree on that. I'm born here. I was raised here. I can trace my family tree back to the 1600s.
That's not. Look, James.
Let me finish, Kevin. Let me finish.
Yeah.
The point that I'm making here is that when it comes to diversity, You trying to say that every single person that enters this country is a refugee?
That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing. Of course
you are
we're
trying
not.
to say that cultures are, kind of homogenous. Me and Emma prove that it's not.
It's not the point. It's not the, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're missing the point. The fact of the matter is we are importing prejudices from these foreign
we have
cultures.
plenty prejudices.
It doesn't matter. We are importing prejudices. Therefore, I would... Wait a second. I would contend that importing prejudices is an indication that diversity is our weakness, not our strength. Right, Emma?
Because prejudice...
Wait.
Why do you want me to disagree with Emma?
James, come on, man. Let Emma speak.
Well, for a start, this is straw man central because you've straw manned almost every part of my argument. My argument would be that, I mean, you and I are both British. We come from the same culture and therefore we both value liberty. We both want people to have, I presume, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That's why you and I can differ, even though you and I are both coming from the same culture. But the problem is that if you have an open door policy where you allow in all of these people and you're allowing
open door policy.
You must let me finish my point. You have interrupted me so many times.
No, you and Kevin have both
you've done it again.
We are in.
Hang on, James, will you? For God's sake, Emma.
We are importing sectarian conflicts from all over the world. We've already seen some of these conflicts spilling out into violence on our streets. So much so that academic experts are actually warning of the conditions being created for civil war. That is the extent to which sectarian division. Please let me finish my point. I've sat here patiently and I have listened to you shout and yell your views. I just want to finish one simple point, which is that we have imported sectarian tensions from around the world, and we are finding it very, very difficult to deal with them. We're finding it very, very difficult to deal with the fact, for example, that there have been Muslim women who have said that the state hasn't stood up for their rights within their own communities. We're talking about minorities within minorities, whether they're women, whether they're homosexuals, whether they're any other minority within minorities, that the state hasn't stood up for their rights because the state has been, and politicians have been afraid of being accused of Islamophobia. We have a reticence and a reluctance to intervene when it comes to anti-Semitism because of a fear of being called racist, of being called Islamophobic. We have people who have protested outside of schools teaching the LGBT curriculum, whether you agree with that or not, because they're coming from a certain religious background. We have a teacher who has been run into hiding for showing a picture of Muhammad where he still lives today because of death threats. Yeah. This is not a strength. This kind of diversity is not a strength because we have allowed an unlimited supply of people to come in from other countries that hold not just very different attitudes to our own, but who hold views that are actively hostile to British culture and to the very liberties that both you and I prize. And that is why we have common ground in having this argument, because we both believe in freedoms. And there are people from around the world who don't believe in freedoms and who would shut you up in an instant.
Yeah, and by the way, Jen, I think what Emma's saying, much more eloquently than I could, she isn't contending that Britain is supposed to be a white Christian country. That's not what we're talking about. Britain is Britain. And for better or for worse, we have imported lots of foreign cultures. The fashionable cliche from people like Keir Starmer and the King is to say, this is our strength, diversity is our strength. Well, what Emma is talking about are the realities, the practical realities that are a fair indication that diversity is far from our strength. It is a big problem causer. It is our weakness. You see what I'm saying?
No.
No. Emma, you better say something. We finally shut him up.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you want me to say. You both just said, like, very.
We're saying what we're saying.
Why are you talking over me when you've just like?
What we're saying. Well, because right. I'm trying to reiterate my point.
Because you've not even challenged the basic lies that Emma's told.
What lies? She hasn't told lies. Don't accuse her of telling. Don't tell her. Accuse her of telling lies.
What's the open door policy?
The fact that we don't know who is coming over on these small boats. They don't have
policy.
We don't know. No, well, it's a policy to not deal with it, isn't it? It's a policy to use to have any kind of effective border. Yes.
We have a border. We have a border.
Yeah, but it's not very well policed.
Well, you don't think it's good, but we don't have an open door policy. For you to say things like
well,
that,
you're just nitpicking now. You're nitpicking, James. You're nitpicking. You know what she's saying. We have over the past 15 years let in millions and millions of migrants from foreign cultures. Well, no, wait a second. That's not. It's true. We've let in millions of migrants.
You cannot accuse me of lying and then not allow me to respond. You can't accuse me of lying and not allow me to respond. It isn't just about the fact that we have a porous border on the Kent coast, that we have all of these people coming over and we have no idea who they are, where they're from. You know, they could be terrorists. We don't know. We have no idea who they are. It's a huge security risk. It's not just about that. When we talk about an open door policy, you know exactly what that means. Don't be disingenuous. It means a very, very liberal immigration policy, which we have had.
We don't have a very liberal immigration policy.
Increasingly, it has become increasingly. Look at the numbers that are coming here. If that is not indicative of a very liberal open door immigration policy, then what on earth is?
Yeah, I mean, with 41,000 illegal migrants came across the channel illegally last year. Plus, we let in about 650,000 legally. So there are a lot of foreigners coming into our country every year. And again, I'm not complaining about that per se. I am saying it brings with it problems, and to just say this influx of 650,000 or so foreigners from different cultures every year is our strength is just a cliche. And if you look at the reality, it's not our strength, is it, Emma?
May I ask a question? Because I would like to know whether you think it is a strength that there are Jewish people who are, I know, Jewish people who are moving to Israel because they no longer feel that this country is safe. Because there are, yes, we can talk about anti-Semitism within the white British population. Absolutely, we can. But would you deny that there are countries around the world that have serious problems with anti-Semitism? That there is a serious problem with anti-Semitism within Muslim communities in Britain? Because that is the reason why so many Jewish people feel so unsafe here that they are having to leave. Don't you think that that is a complete national disgrace? How can we possibly talk about that in any way being a strength? Because any society that starts to attack its Jewish community, that is the canary in the coal mine. That is the sign of a fatal weakness.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a sign that fascism's on the rise. Anti-Semitism is the bread and butter of the fascists. You know, it's what they do and what they always have.
There's quite a lot of anti-Semitism among the left as well, don't you think, James?
Yeah, absolutely. There's anti-Semitism.
So it's not fascism, is it, necessarily?
What are you on about?
Anti-Semitism is not the preserve of fascism, is it?
No, it's racism, and racism is across the board. It doesn't really matter what
exactly. So why did you say fascism?
The point is, what about Islamism, James? Would you say that that is a form of fascism? Would you say that anti-Semitism is a problem?
I'm going to finish pointing towards what you first said about anti-Semitism, if that's all right. When it comes to racism, which anti-Semitism is, you know, we have seen it increase and increase and increase. All forms of racism have increased. Islamophobia is at an all-time high. Now, I can talk about anti-Semitism on the left all day long. I've talked about for years because it's despicable. What I struggle with is when Islamophobic narratives are pushed on certain media channels and they're not challenged. Why are you comfortable talking about anti-Semitism on one hand, but you're not comfortable talking about Tommy Robinson, the rise of Islamophobia, the way that Muslims are talked about, the way that you've talked about Muslims, the idea that there's an invasion in Britain by Islam? Why are you comfortable talking about one thing and not both?
Did we say that? I don't think we said that. We didn't say that.
About both things. I'm talking to you about...
We didn't say anything about an invasion. Stop putting words into our mouths.
Kevin,
we didn't say anything about an invasion.
The we that I referred to was the news network.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, okay. That's you watch anything back from talkTV today, you will hear it and see it.
Oh, you're blaming talkTV for this? Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll blame you.
Right.
You know, when it comes to that, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, there's an invasion of Muslims into this country underway, is what they talk about every single day of the week.
I don't think they say that.
How do you think that makes Muslim people feel?
I think they talk about. Well, as Emma said, how do you think Jewish people feel in this country?
Well, let's not compare one with the other.
Nobody in this channel talks about the invasion of Muslims.
Yes,
they do not.
Are you for real?
They do not.
Do I need to name them, Kevin?
And we can go back. Name them. Yeah, go on then.
Yeah, Alex Phillips.
She talked about the invasion of Muslims, did she?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll look that up. I doubt it.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, you don't need to, because you
But
know.
I mean, you're just like banning. Oh, look, all these awful racists in the media.
The point is that anti-Semitism as a despicable form of racism that must be tackled and pulled out everywhere.
Agree on that.
As is Islamophobia.
Sure.
As is hatred of every group. The
Sure,
problem is
absolutely.
you
Couldn't
two
agree
only
more.
want to look at one kind of it. You're only comfortable looking at
No,
one.
we're just saying that diversity has not proved to be a triumph in this country. Look around it. Look around.
I believe that it has. I believe that it has.
Well, Emma, have you ever, in your very short life, of course, have you ever known Britain to be less happy, less harmonious than it is now? It's in absolute turmoil.
No, you know, my dad was born in the 1950s, and he thinks that the country is much worse now than it's ever been.
Everybody's dad was born in the 1950s.
Maybe they had manners back in the 1950s.
Why is that funny?
Because everybody's dad was born in the 1950s. Like, that's not the idea that there is an equivalence.
What on earth are you talking about now?
Because you
You're having a go at Emma because his dad was born in the 1950s. What is it you find so wrong about a dad being born in the 1950s?
Well, because we're all smarter than this. The idea that you can say that because back then it was less multicultural and it is more multicultural now, that's what's caused the problems. How about Thatcherism? How about
say that. She didn't say that.
Houses? How about austerity? Why don't you talk about those things?
James, you should join the circus. You are so good at backflipping through hoops. I mean, it's unbelievable. Look, I would just like to address one point that you made, and I find very interesting, which was that I simply mentioned that there is a problem with misogyny and anti-Semitism and also homophobia within certain parts of the Muslim community. And you immediately accused me of Islamophobia. So I think that makes my point for me, actually. Thank you.
I'll tell you what's worse, Emma. I'll tell you what's worse about you is your dad was born in the 1950s. Go on, take that. No, seriously, guys. James, that was a lot of fun. Very interesting, seriously. James Matheson, thank you very much for coming on. And, of course, Emma Trimble as well. Wow. What do you think about that? Who was right? Do you agree with James or do you agree with Emma? 03444991000. Is diversity our strength in Britain, as Keir Starmer seems to think, and indeed King Charles thinks? Or is it a problem? Is it fast beginning to resemble a weakness? I think that is the question. 03444991000. Let's talk about that. Let's go to break. We'll take your calls. I'll read some of your messages. I don't know if we've got any WhatsApp voice notes, but if we have, I'll play them out. All of that still to come. At 10 p.m, I'll hand over the helm of the Good Ship Talk to the great Petri Hoskin. But in the meantime, it's you next. Stay tuned.
these distractions like ID cards and so on. Look, they might make a tiny bit of difference around the edges, but that's not going to fix this thing. The people who are trying to come to the UK are very determined. It's now a multi-billion-pound criminal enterprise. The pull factors of the UK are always going to be huge. That's a compliment to our country. Millions of people around the world want to come to the UK. The only way you'll fix this once and for all is that everyone is detained and deported. And the sooner that Starmer comes to that conclusion, I don't think he ever will, frankly, but the sooner that he does, the better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Going to go to the phones in just a second, but lots of messages about the debate we just had with James Mathewson and Emma Trimble. Is diversity Britain's strength? Keir Starmer, of course, thinks it is. So does the King. All the bien-pensant Guardian reader classes think it's amazing. I like the idea. I think what Emma and I were trying to say, James having none of it, was, look, we like the idea, but the reality is it's not working. It's causing all sorts of cultural problems. And I've got lots of messages. Here's Steve. Sorry, hi Kev. Sorry, but James is deluded. If he doesn't think civil unrest is looming, the only thing Starmer has gotten right is we are becoming an island of strangers, all caused by mass migration. Of course, Starmer rescinded his island of strangers speech, didn't he? This is Hugh. Hugh in Basingstoke said, hi, Kev. Wow, what a brilliant debate. Emma is a very sharp lady. More, please, Kevin. Yeah, well, Emma's always welcome on this show. She's an old friend. So, yes, very good debate on both sides, I thought. As you might have noticed, I was sort of more on Emma's side, but I tried to be studiously unneutral. Sorry, studiously neutral. Well, you know, I can have an opinion as well, can't I? Here's what Andrew from Salisbury has to say about James. He said, I like James, but he has tried selling coal to Newcastle. He knows the game is up, and his arguments for massive immigration and DEI are pointless. I think that's a good point from Andrew. I do think that the whole DEI saga is coming to an end. We've had enough of it. But let's, before we go to the phones, we've got Georgina waiting. Always a pleasure. Let's listen to a WhatsApp voice note first. This is Richard on Donald Trump.
I can't believe what madness I'm hearing on your programme. We intending to go to war with Russia? Americans can just do what it likes, invade who it likes, occupy who it likes, take their resources, abduct their heads of state? What kind of mad world are we living in? And what kind of madness are you semi-supporting? I really, really don't believe it. I honestly worry for my country when I hear madness like this coming from what I thought was a sensible person like yourself.
Look, interesting, Richard. Interesting. I know what you mean. However, Venezuela was a narco state. Venezuela was flooding America with cocaine and fentanyl, causing big drug problems in the United States, but also, more to the point, biggest oil reserves in the entire world. Most of those oil reserves weren't going America's way. They were going to Cuba, they were going to China, they were going to Russia. Donald Trump has taken steps to put America in better shape. You know, this is the way it goes, the way of the world. You know, he's not going to go around doing that everywhere. I mean, I understand the point you're making, but I do think there's an argument to say that what Donald Trump did was a good thing. Maduro was a drug runner. He's a murderer. He's assassin had so many people eliminated. His wife, Lady Macbeth, she's god awful. These are awful people. They're drug dealers. They're corrupt. They've taken a load of money for themselves. They deserve it. So, Richard, I wouldn't be so shocked about what Donald Trump has done. But I understand what you mean. It's shocking to perceive. It's quite a spectacle. Anyway, we've wasted long enough. It's time to talk to Georgina. Hi, Georgina.
Hi, Kevin. Good evening. I really enjoyed that debate.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it?
Well, it was great, but I was having an argument with James here.
I bet you were.
I was indeed. I'd love to get in a room for 5 minutes with that boy, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I've rang in about the surveillance state that's being brought in by the government. This isn't for our protection at all, Kevin. This surveillance is to document our reaction when the sorry state of illegal migration reaches a crescendo within our now decimated nation. This surveillance is a weapon with which to pinpoint the strongest of those who protest against the rape of our children, the abuse of the good nature of the British people, and the blatant abuse of our welfare and health system. We live in a dual world now, Kevin. One where we face consequences and one where the rules don't apply. And there's no prizes for guessing which category we British fall into. This government have taken our kindness for weakness for so long now that they think they can take away all of our privacies, all of our democratic freedoms, and we're going to keep quiet in case of reprisal by the government or incarceration.
It's interesting.
They're trying their very best to get a rise out of us, Kevin.
I'm not quite sure that I agree with you in terms of Crowborough. Crowborough, I think, is the local people thinking we need more CCTV surveillance to keep the streets safe. Generally speaking, in terms of surveillance in this country and the increasing government monitoring of the population, then I think you're bang on the money. We've got a real problem. We are the most surveilled country in the world. We have the most CCTV cameras in the world, and that is for the government. It's not for us. And we've got to be careful. People always say, don't they, Georgina? They always go, well, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. That is the most asinine argument in the world. If I've done nothing wrong, I should not be filmed. I should not be surveyed. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, I do see what you mean, Kevin. And you know, there's an argument on both sides, but what I'm saying is they're using the excuse that this surveillance is for our safety. Well, if that's the case, Kevin, then they already know that filling our country with fighting-age, sexually active men with medieval backward ideologies is a dangerous situation to put any resident from our towns or cities in. You know, the government do not care about this. We only have to look at the prior lack of convictions of these migrants by the woke leftist humanitarian EU suck-up lawyers to realise that the judiciary and the government are batting for the wrong team.
Well,
any government that will put the indigenous population in this situation must be totally morally bankrupt.
Do you know what I thought was the most powerful moment in the interview I did with that councillor in Crowborough, Andrew Wilson? Was when he said, look, there's a sort of arbitrary nature about what's happened to Crowborough. It's just the latest place, almost a pin on a map. That's where we're going to put the latest batch of migrants, 540 of them. The people of that town, you don't have any say in it. We're going to stick them in your local army base and you can put up with it. Andrew Wilson said, well, in case you're saying, well, this isn't where I live, he said, be aware that this is coming soon to your town. All over the country this is happening, and as I keep saying, Georgina, I don't think we should have to live like this.
No, well, we shouldn't have to live looking over our shoulders, looking out into our gardens to make sure our children are safe, having to worry about our daughters when they go out for an evening out to have a meal. This is not the way to live. We did not want this illegal immigration problem. These people, as soon as they put their feet upon our terra firma, are breaking our laws, and they're getting away with it scot-free. And we have not got a voice, Kevin, and this has got to stop. Keir Starmer, at some point, must listen to the British public, because the British public are at their their very last nerve. I know. I can see. I've got eyes in my head. I'm not blind. I can see what's going on.
Yeah, Keir Starmer listening to the British public, and pigs might fly, Georgina. But we live in hope. Brilliant points, as always, from you. Always great to talk to you. Keep on calling. I know you will. Lovely to talk. Georgina in London. Let's go to break now. More of your calls. WhatsApp voice notes. I'll read some messages when we come back. Stay where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Go to the phones in a little while. This is from Terry. He says, I wish Trump would invade here and make us the 51st state and lock up Stalin Starmer while he's at it. Kind regards from Terry the plumber in Bolton. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, well, you know, why stop at Venezuela, Donald? Why did you come over here? You know, have a go at London. Here's Chris in Lancashire. Diversity is a strength until the diverse immigrants that come to this country demand that we fundamentally change our views and our values to meet their values here in the UK. Well, I think it's important to stress that most of the major majority of the migrants who come to this country, they don't want to impose their culture on us. They just want to come here and live and do the best they can. But there is this extreme element, particularly in the Islamic community, the extremists, who they want Sharia law, they want to impose their culture on us, they want us to take second position, and that's why, you know, people are upset. That's why diversity isn't necessarily our strength. So it's not the majority of migrants who want to take the country over culturally, but there are some who do. And that is a problem, and that is why, arguably, diversity is not our strength, it's our biggest problem. Let's talk to Dan in Liverpool. Hi, Dan, you want to talk about Donald Trump?
Hello, Kevin. And no, our diversity is definitely not our strength, and that's coming from a mixed-race individual like myself.
Well, okay. Well, you the voice of experience. Why do you think that? Before we get on to Trump, Dan.
Well, I've come from father's side Muslim, mother's side Catholic, and I will say my father's side has seen the extremist side of Islam, and for people who want Sharia law, there's a great film, I believe it's called The Stoning of Zaire. I might be mispronouncing that. I would recommend everyone watch that film. It's a really great documentary, and they'll understand what real Islam actually is and how barbaric it is, especially towards women.
Well, yeah, I mean, some elements of it. You've got to be careful. I mean, I always say about Muslim people the same as everyone else. Same, but you know, most human beings are the same. They're trying to get by, keep a roof over their heads, feed the kids, keep enough money in their bank account. You know, that's what most people. That's what binds us all together. Most Muslims are like that, but there are some Muslims who are extremists who do not wish us well. But Dan, you wanted to talk about Donald Trump and what he's done in Venezuela. You approve?
100%. I think it's a beautiful thing. As your other guests have already said, I only wish it could
I like that. Yeah, go on. It's like a movie. It was a hell of a film. It's gonna be a film one day. But anyway, why do you think it was a beautiful thing, Dan?
Well, for one thing, he's helped free most of Venezuelans, which I understand most of our left-wing side of our country will not like that because they've brought down the socialists. But I think I'm not pretending he's an absolute genius like some people are claiming, but what he's done is he's put a massive strain on China to say, right, you want oil, you're going to have to go through us now.
And Russia, Dan, and Russia. But Venezuela, was basically in the pockets of both Russia and China. Venezuela supplying loads of oil to both countries, particularly to Russia and China via Cuba. So that was what this was partly about. It was the influence of these two superpowers, Russia and China, on Venezuela, which is quite close to America. So that's why he's done what he's done.
100%. And people keep wanting to talk. I know Starmer and all of them seem so happy to talk about going to war with Russia. Well, Donald Trump has now made it a lot more better in our favour if anything ever did happen.
Absolutely. What do you make of what's going on now off the coast of Ireland, where we're told Donald Trump is about to instigate a raid on this tanker, this Venezuelan tanker, which is supposed to be on its way to Russia full of oil. It apparently is going to require the permission of Keir Starmer to use Britain as a base for this raid. Do you think Starmer will grant that permission?
I don't think Donald Trump would give a toss if Donald...
Well, he's going to have to ask him if he's going to use Britain.
I think Donald Trump cares as much about Keir Starmer's opinion as Keir Starmer would care about my opinion.
Yeah, so Keir Starmer doesn't care about any of our opinions. But interesting times, and I get what you're saying, Dan. Really good to talk. Thank you for an excellent call. Dan in Liverpool. Let's go to break, but before we do, shall we just play another WhatsApp voice note? This is Sarah on the sex offender story that we've been covering, that hundreds of sex offenders, rapists, paedophiles, child sex abusers every year are getting off scot-free just by apologising to their victims. Let's hear what Sarah has to say about this.
I get the feeling that people in the judiciary believe that these people are victims and therefore, it's like it's a sexual fetish and therefore, with a bit of counselling and a bit of talk therapy, they can be fixed. They're criminals. Lock them up. Build a new prison. Because I'm now at the point, Kevin, where I'm going out and I'm carrying a personal alarm and some hairspray in my bag. I don't want to live like that. It's not fair on us law-abiding citizens. We're doing the right thing and yet we're living in fear and chaos. Law's gone out the window and I'm sick of it. It needs to be sorted out.
That was an excellent voice note, wasn't it, from Sarah? Yeah, exactly. Where is the justice in allowing someone who's raped a child to get away with just saying sorry? That's not justice. That is ludicrous leniency. The whole point of punishment is to offer up a deterrent. If you rape a child, then you should have the full force of the law upon you. You should be getting a long prison sentence. The idea that someone who raped a child is allowed to go, I'm sorry about that, and the police go, OK, well, don't you do it again. Let that be a lesson to you. Off you go now. It's unbelievable. We're talking about justice here, aren't we? Shall we go to break now? When we come back, we'll talk to Richard in North London. Stay where you are.
these distractions like ID cards and so on. Look, they might make a tiny bit of difference around the edges, but that's not going to fix this thing. The people who are trying to come to the UK are very determined. It's now a multi-billion-pound criminal enterprise. The pull factors in the UK are always going to be huge. That's a compliment to our country. Millions of people around the world want to come to the UK. The only way you'll fix this once and for all is that everyone is detained and deported. And the sooner that Starmer comes to that conclusion, I don't think he ever will, frankly, but the sooner that he does, the better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Loads of reaction to our fierce debate between Emma Trimble and James Mathewson earlier about whether or not diversity is Britain's strength. Emma arguing it's not really, it's a weakness, it's a problem now. James saying it's an absolute triumph. Margaret in Yorkshire has texted in to say, James seems to think we should allow every migrant in. Some are very dangerous, which he doesn't seem to see. How would he feel if a member of his family was assaulted by a migrant, as many people have been? That's Margaret in Yorkshire. And I've got a name here, R&B, whoever the hell that is. R&B sent a message about Emma. Emma is a star, very brave and a credit to her generation. She should have her own show on Talk. As for idiot James, he can make the tea. I don't know what that means. Anyway, that's what R&B says. R&B's opinion, not mine. Right, let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Richard from North London. Hello, Richard. You want to talk about Venezuela? What would you like to say?
Well, yeah, I think the thing that occurred to me was the chap from Republicans Abroad was saying that he's basically saying that this wasn't like Iraq, but the reality is it does remind me very much of what Blair is doing in Iraq. I don't think Trump has much of an economic policy, frankly. So he's getting far too involved in foreign policy stuff. And the reality is this is a clear break of international law.
Well, that's debatable, actually. That's debatable. That's the trouble with international law. It's completely nebulous. It changes by the moment.
You can't kidnap a leader from a...
Well, yeah, but there's also, under international law, there's a strong argument to say that if a nation in some way is endangering your own citizens, then a country may be allowed to take, unilateral action, like America did. So Donald Trump is saying that this is a narco state that's flooding America with cocaine and fentanyl and putting American citizens at risk, and therefore I am taking steps to stop that. That would be within international law. It would be. It would be if he argues that successfly.
Yeah,
That's the trouble, Richard, with international law.
It's so different to what we've been told for years, and I would really doubt that. And the reality is that means any country can invade any other country.
Well, if they got the right reasons, yeah. You're assuming that there's a blanket rule to ban countries from invading or taking unilateral action against other countries in all circumstances. That's not true.
Sorry, Kevin, that simply is true.
No, it isn't true. It isn't.
History, countries aren't able to do that. There has to.
They are if they can argue that they're.
Very rarely.
No, true. It's true. Look, Richard, this is not a debate. This is not a debate. It is a fact that under international law, you can argue that if a foreign nation is threatening the safety of your own citizens, you can take action.
So when we had the Irish terrorism problem, we could have had carte blanche to
carte blanche
to attack Ireland and to bomb.
Well, that was Northern Ireland. That's part of the United Kingdom. So.
Kevin, this is such
no. The United Kingdom. That's part of our country. You don't attack your own country.
No, we could have said that. No,
you can't attack your own country.
No, Kevin.
That's Northern Ireland. That's part of the United Kingdom.
We could have attacked the IRA bases that were in the Republic of Ireland. I mean, this is lunacy. Listen,
well, we could have argued that was okay. Yeah.
People would have regarded us as pariahs. It's madness.
It doesn't matter about pariah. The point is that could arguably be within international law.
Well,
taking steps to keep your own citizens safe. It's a legal argument, but the idea that what Donald Trump and America did to Venezuela and Maduro and his wife was 100% outside of international law is not the case. There's an argument that what Trump did was within international law. That's the problem, Richard, with international law. The rules change by the day.
He says he's going to run another country. I mean, the thing is, it's a recipe for complete anarchy.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that there may not be trouble ahead. I agree with you. Well, I don't know if I say it's madness, but it's quite a spectacle to watch, isn't it?
Well, it is. And I think in terms of multiculturalism, I think you just got to ask yourself, why do we assume that the world is a better place, or rather that Britain is a better place, since 1965 or 1948? Because the reality is, if you ask Ray Hader or Mancu, he would tell you that we built the greatest civilization ever seen when we were monocultural.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just think that diversity, we've got a problem with it at the moment. Richard, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much, mate. Richard in North London. Let's quickly talk to Martin in Kent, because he's been waiting a long time. I'm sorry, Martin, you don't have long, but what would you like to say?